Boston's third baseman, who signed an 11-year, $331 million deal. He'll go to San Francisco. Jordan Hicks. Kyle Harrison, who was supposed to start tonight, is also reportedly in the deal. This is an earth-shaking move by both of those organizations.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's get into it. That is what it sounded like on ESPN as the deal was announced. Rafael Devers has been traded. Alex, people might be a little surprised. We're not opening up today with the Cardinals losing 3 out of 4 against the Brewers, but it is somewhat related. This weekend, to me, pushed you into the seller category. Now, that can change. We've got 6 weeks now leading into the trade deadline, but you lose 3 out of 4 against Milwaukee. You now have looked, really for the most part, bad in the entire month of June. And more importantly, you look at where you fall into the standings, it's hard to make the case for the Cardinals. I have been saying for a while now, the Giants are the team that I just don't believe in. I don't think they're as good as their record would indicate thus far. They, like you, lacked a star position player. They do have a couple of really good starters at the front end of their rotation, but the depth is lacking a little bit. So I just always kind of assumed, well, this is going to come back down to earth. And then they traded for Rafael Devers. And now they no longer lack that bat in the middle of their order. So you look at it, and man, like, you've lost 7 of 8 overall. You're 2.5 games back of the wild card. You're tied with the Diamondbacks now, who we've considered a seller for a while. You're tied with the Reds for 4th place in your division, and a few games back for both of you are in the wild card. And the Brewers are now ahead of you officially for that 3rd wild card spot as well. You're 7 games back in the division. Guys, for a while I held out hope. And I tried to tell all of you, oh, it's going to be okay. This team's pretty good. They're not great at anything, but pretty good at everything. I still think they're pretty decent. I think the bar has just been raised to a place this year that I'm not sure the Cardinals are going to be able to get to. And now that we saw this massive move yesterday by the Giants, a team that you are directly competing against for one of those spots in the wild card, Alex, it's hard for me to see the case. It's hard for me to put them anywhere other than in the sellers category as of today.
Yeah, look, once I saw the Devers trade to San Francisco, you looked at the landscape and you're like, I don't understand how the Cardinals are a wild card team anymore, because now you're hoping for the Phillies, Giants, or Padres to fall out of it. And the Giants, although they are the team you'd point to because the Padres and Phillies scream more consistency, I mean, they've been putting together a lot of wins lately, and now you add an impact bat. The Phillies, you kind of expect to be there. And the same with the Padres. When you go get a bat that is a difference maker like Devers, or even just a player that's a difference maker to a wild card team, now if you're the Cardinals, you look up and you say, cool, so the NL Central is where our path to a playoff team is.
Yeah, you're only 7 games back there.
I don't even know if I feel that that's a path for them to the playoffs.
Well, it's not. I mean, I don't feel like any are realistic, but when you look at the teams that you're leapfrogging over, I mean, you just got beat by the Brewers in a series, and I know you beat them earlier in the season, but this is more kind of in line where you're at. This is the snowball that I've defended this Cardinals team against for the longest time. Since the month of June has begun, the Cardinals have lost. And when you're doing that while 3 teams around you are improving internally and playing good baseball, you look at one spot and you say, this is how we make the playoffs. If the Giants aren't realistic anymore, and I don't think the Padres or Phillies are falling out of it, even if they might, you have to compare yourself and say, how do we match up against those teams? I don't think you could do that with any team in front of you in the National League anymore.
You're 6 weeks away from making that choice. I mean, it feels like it's a long way away. It's really not, man. It's not that far. And we know how this stuff works. Most of this is decided before that final week. That final week, you're in, like, negotiation mode. So that brings you down to 5. And there's an all-star break. So that actually brings you down to 4 weeks of baseball to be played between now and the trade deadline. And you just lost 3 out of 4 against your divisional rival that you're trying to compete against head-to-head. And that team ain't great, man. They're fine, but that team's not great. You've lost 7 of your last 8 games. Now you're going on the road to Chicago. You better win at least 2 out of 3 if you want to still consider yourself like in it. And then you've got Cincinnati and Chicago at home. That's going to be really telling. These next 10 games, I mean, you just put yourself in a spot where you probably need to win like 7 of 10 or 8 out of 10 to feel good about it. And 3 of those need to come head-to-head against the Cubs. You need to win 3 out of 4 there. And then when you play them again, 4th of July weekend in Chicago, you probably need to win at least 2 out of 3 there. The Cardinals had done a really good job of not putting themselves behind the 8 ball this season. That was a big part of them not falling so far back, not 10-24, not 15-24. You didn't get into that spot. Well, you're only 2 games above 500 right now, and a couple of years ago, even last year, that'd be fine at this spot in the season. This year, it's not. The bar has been raised. It's much like the Blues, where if you had told us going into the year, hey, you're going to finish with, 96 points?
Yeah.
There's going to be no chance that you're even in consideration to miss out on the playoffs. But this year, the bar was a little bit higher to get in, and that's what's happening right now in the National League.
Yeah, because the Cardinals, again, I still believe they are a good/fine team, right? They feel kind of like what they were last year, which was like kind of right around 500. Problem is, this is going to take 91, 92 wins, and that bar may have just been raised because of the Devers trade to San Francisco. And we all know San Diego, A.J. Preller is shaking right now to go make a trade just like that.
He wanted to apparently get in on Devers. Apparently the Padres were one of the teams that called.
Yeah, I mean, and like everybody that's in the playoff spot right now, in these 6 playoff spots, all these teams we knew were going to be buyers going into the trade deadline, right?
That's the thing.
And so, like, they were already destined to be buyers. Well, you were playing up until the All-Star break just to, a minimum, prove, like, hey, just don't sell anything, right? Just keep the band together, and we'll see if we can do this together. Now, because you're falling a little bit behind, right? They are playing bad baseball right now. The problem is no team ahead of you is going through a slump, right? Philly went through that weird, 10-game stretch. They've turned it back around.
Yeah.
They've won 4 in a row.
You have no room for error here with the Cardinals, and that is the tough spot for them. And because you've got all these great pieces, they are definitely now leaning back towards sell mode. And it's going to take an incredible 4 weeks, 5 weeks of baseball here to really turn that around.
That's the biggest thing, too, for me. Like, you've already seen the Giants do this. I think both the Phillies and Padres are expected to do some type of buying at the deadline. So you're not only judging your team against their teams in terms of the stars that they have, and I mean, you could count about 2 or 3 stars on each one of those teams, but then consider what those teams are going to do. The Phillies are going to be looking for a closer to make them elite. The Padres probably looking for another bat or a starting pitcher. It gets early late. Gets late early for the Cardinals. I was going to read through that one anyway. And yes, there's 6 weeks until the deadline. Decisions start getting made sooner rather than later, and I think that series against the Brewers might have started to sway the Cardinals in one direction.
Yeah, it starts to get you there, and then you look around. I think it was less about, to me, the Brewers series, and this is more about just where you're at. You're just stacking yourself up against some of these other contenders, and the Cardinals have played well head-to-head against them for the most part this season. But then you look at your last 8, you've lost 7 of 8, and it's a numbers game. You're 7 back in the division. You're now basically 3 games back in the wild card, but you've got a bunch of teams in front of you that you have to jump over now. It's not an easy proposition to find yourself in. Can they do it? Yeah. I'm not at least declaring the season dead today. But it is closer to that than it has been for me at any point during the season thus far because of what you have done and because of what the teams around you are doing. The Phillies and the Padres, I never really had a lot of concerns about. They're going to be good, and they have a lot of reasons to go for it this season. Both teams should be as close to all in as you possibly can be without, truly mortgaging everything in your future. The Giants were my one team that I held hope with, and they just went and made the move. The other thing that this does, Alex, I was listening to a podcast over the weekend. It's called The Round Table. It's the athletics guys, their baseball podcast. And they were talking about the Detroit Tigers. But they might as well have been talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. They basically said, listen, is this a team that's going to win a bunch of games during the regular season? Sure. Right now, they still have, as of today, the best record in all of Major League Baseball. They were like, listen, you look at the team, they lack stars. Could Riley Green be that? Maybe. Could Spencer Torkelson be that? Maybe. He's going through a little bit of a slump lately. But they lack superstars, and generally speaking, you see teams with superstars get to the World Series and certainly win it. They went through the top 2 position players on every World Series team basically since the 2015 Royals. Every single one of them had a duo that was kind of like what you had with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, right? 2 legit MVP candidates almost every single season. The Tigers don't have that. And the reason why I bring that up right now is because neither do the Cardinals. The Cardinals don't have those guys in the middle of your order that you can stack up against any of these teams. In fact, now that the Giants have Rafael Devers, we did this a little bit before the show. How many teams can you reasonably say have a worse best player on their team than the St. Louis Cardinals? Because who would you guys say is the Cardinals' best position player right now?
I mean, I would say it's Brendan Donovan or Ivan Herrera, one of the two.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd probably lean Herrera.
So whichever one you decided. Now let's go through some of these teams, and you think about their best player in your mind, okay?
It's going to be close.
So Donovan or Herrera versus the Mets. I guess you could go Juan Soto.
Well, this is already a losing game, considering we can't even name the best player on the Cardinals team.
But again,
I can name 3 Mets.
that's where we're at.
This is like going to the Dodgers and be like, who's the best player, Ohtani or Betts or Freeman?
Hey, that's a good point. They also have 3 of them. So is it all that bad?
Or Edman. You know?
The Cardinals,
Tommy
just
James.
like the Dodgers, some are saying. Cardinals best player versus, let's say, Bryce Harper for the Phillies.
Oh, it's Bryce Harper with the Phillies.
Ronald Acuna Jr. with the Braves.
Are we going pre-Hurt Acuna
No,
or
it don't
post-Hurt?
matter. He's better.
The Nationals, I guess C.J. Abrams, maybe James Wood, one of those two.
I'd give the Cardinals the edge there.
Yeah.
Say it's a wash.
Closer than you think, but yeah, I agree.
The Marlins, the Cardinals.
I can't name a Marlin.
Kyle Tucker with the Cubs.
No, he's better.
Not a superstar.
The Brewers, I think it's Jackson Chourio.
Him
Yeah.
or Yelich?
I'd say Churio, but I mean, I can hear the Yelich because of the MVP
And I'd
conversation.
say they're probably a little better than yours.
I'd
I'd say
agree.
it's comparable, but I would probably slide with one of those
Watson
two.
and Churio come away with a couple big hits.
Ellie
over the
De La
weekend.
Cruz, would you say he's better
Yes.
than your best player?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Pittsburgh Pirates, whoever you deem to be their best player, position player.
Yeah, position player. You're
I'm
better
like
than
T-Bone with the Marlins. I can't name a
Who
position
do you
player.
think the Dodgers' best position player is? I'm just going to go ahead and ask it.
I would say Matt Betts.
That's what I would go with.
I'd say Betts too.
And he's
probably.
better than
Yeah.
yours?
Yeah, DH isn't a position.
The Giants
Oh, wait,
now
Herrera's
have
out now.
Rafael Devers. I would say he's better than anything you have.
Yeah.
The Padres, whoever you want to go with there, Manny Machado, let's call it Fernando Tatis Jr., both better.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks, Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, better.
Yeah.
And then the Rockies, who don't have any position players.
also
and are
can't name one of their
one of the
players.
worst teams in Major League Baseball
Don't they have
history.
Montero that the Cardinals traded him?
I think he's gone now. 14 and 57 now are the Rockies. 14
Hey, at
and
least it's
57.
double
they've
digits.
won.
Double digits.
Yeah.
That puts you 11th.
Oh.
There are only 4 teams in the National League that have a worse best player than the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
It's a tough way to win, man.
Devers got traded over the weekend, and you look at it and you say, that's the move the Cardinals should have made. Devers had no position on this team, wouldn't have made sense for this
I was
team,
about to say, you couldn't have made this
but
move.
the Cardinals need Devers. They need a middle-of-the-order bat.
They need an outfield version of Devers.
Yeah.
Or a second base version of Devers. That's it.
They need a bat that strikes fear in the middle of your lineup, and that's what Devers was.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Speaking of that middle of the order bat, they really could have used that over the weekend. What has happened with this offense? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
look at May, we were able to run out our guys almost every day with the Thursdays being off. We've had to mix and match a little more and give guys opportunities and see what they can do with it. But, yeah, we know it's going to be a tough stretch. The guys are playing hard. Tomorrow, off day, is a timely one. Get to regroup and then get back at it. So we're looking forward to it.
That's what it sounded like on FanDuel Sports Midwest alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. The Cardinals are going through a slump right now. They've lost 7 of their last 8 games. Alex, you look at it offensively. You had been talking all year about their success with runners in scoring position. And now you look at it and it's just not happening to the same degree. I mean, they yesterday had multiple opportunities.
Yeah. Yesterday hurt.
To come through, especially in that 9th inning. And you have 2 on, no out. Walker Scott win coming up in the 9th inning. You're down by a run. You can't come through. That's it. Boom. Like, it's that small. The margin for error for this team is that slim. And you look at the way that they've been playing. Some of this is by their own doing, right? So they had been playing a man down because Donovan is hurt. And they don't decide to make really many roster moves to be able to cover for that. And then yesterday, you get Donovan back, but you need Mason Wynn to take a day. So what do? Well, it's obviously got to be Barrero that's going out there because he's on scholarships this season. They can't possibly send him down. It's a scholarship. It's like renewable after the season. You can't make any moves with it during the regular season. It's frustrating, man. They're not maximizing this roster. And they have guys going through slumps right now. Newt's really going through it, man. Victor Scott has been going through it for a little while as well. You finally get Jordan Walker back, and that hopefully will help your offense a little bit. You needed the right-handed bat in the outfield. It certainly wasn't going to be Valade. But, Alex, what do you make of their offensive struggles right now? Because it's been going on now for a couple of weeks.
They're losing their clutch factor. Like, they're losing the one thing that was getting me excited about this Cardinals team, the ability to come up with big hits and big situations. And I think Sundays was just kind of the icing on the cake, but Friday was another rough one. They went 2 for 9 on Friday with runners in scoring position, and then you go 0 for 7 yesterday. In the eventual, you have that opportunity to get back into the baseball game in the 9th inning, and you just lay an egg. And it's not so much they're laying eggs, it's they're swinging and missing at those. Like in the past, earlier in the season, it felt like they were at least making contact, and you were thinking like, okay, at some point they're going to have an aggressive at-bat. Man, Sunday didn't even feel like you had that aggressive at-bat with the guy at the plate. It was just quick 3 pitches, and then the game was over.
They have the second highest in the month of June, second highest strikeout rate with runners in scoring position.
And that's what it felt like last night in the 9th. And I think it was Mason Wynn at the plate to get that final out, and it was 3 pitches, and it was just swing, swing, swing. Some of this might just be the Cardinals' offense getting way too overly aggressive at certain at-bats, like getting away from what the game plan has been all season, because look, you're trying to pull yourself into a race right now. You know that the trade deadline is coming. This is where you start to feel that pressure a little bit more. But isn't that some of the concern? Like, you're not performing when the brights are the lightest, as BK likes to say. And right now, the RISP is not doing anything for this Cardinals team.
And they are living and dying with that, much like their pitching. Like, it's going to come down to whether or not you hit with runners in scoring position. I think sometimes it gets overstated a little bit, like the success or the failures, especially in any kind of a small sample size. Overall, this season, the Cardinals have mostly been pretty good with runners in scoring position. But lately, they haven't, and it shines. Why? Because you don't have the benefit of the long ball. Some teams can get through slumps like this, like where you're not hitting for the average, and you're just like, you're leaning on home runs. It's not a sexy way to win, but you can do it. The Cardinals can't get away with that because they don't have the benefit of those home run balls. They just don't have guys that consistently come up with that kind of power. Herrera does it a little bit for you. Contreras does it a little bit for you. Burleson has his moments. But overall, this is just not a lineup that hits for enough slug to lean heavily on that to be able to win. You have to come through in the clutch. And that's why early on this season, this is, in my opinion, the most fun version of a baseball team to root for when it's going well. Because the ball's constantly put in play. You get these big rallies in individual innings. You don't have any individual stars. You get up to the plate, and again, when it's going well, you feel like everybody can keep that rally going, right? Anybody that's going up to the plate, you're excited about it. But when it goes poorly, when you go through slumps, which are inevitable because it's baseball, baseball's hard, when you go through these slumps, it's infuriating to watch. Because you get to the plate with any given guy and you're like, oh boy, well, there's no power threat here. Hopefully he comes through, because if he doesn't, I don't know how we're scoring today. And that's where it feels like they're at right now. It's not that bad. The offense is still like top 12 in Major League Baseball. You're fine. But when you have a pitching staff that's just okay, that's not good enough. You've got to be able to come through in more of these big spots. And this weekend, man, I thought your lack of that big home run power was on display, and I think their pitching was seriously on display. Some of this is you tip your cap and say, they've got good dudes over there, man. Like that closer, that guy's a stud. And you put together some really good at-bats against him. Just wasn't enough. They were better.
Yeah, I agree with the lack of the home run ball is a big issue driving the offense, because when you don't slug, it just gets that much harder. And especially when you are a team like the Cardinals, where you don't have even just one guy, right, that you can kind of, I've talked about this in the past, they don't have one guy that you can say, right and pen, 30 bombs, 100 RBIs. So when you're not slugging, and then you look at the lineup and you've got 6 of your 9 regulars that are suddenly below league average offensively, yeah, things are going to get a lot harder for the Cardinals. It is going to be something that they just cannot survive off of. You might be able to get away with a lack of power, but long as you have a dude, right? And they just don't have the guys. We just talked about in the last segment, there are 10, 11 teams in the National League that have a better star player than what your best star player, quote unquote, would be. And that is just not a recipe that you're going to live by. You're not going to be able to survive with this kind of slugging percentage where they are 16th in the league right now in that number. And they're even lower when you talk about the home run ball, where they're bottom 10 in the league. So,
and this was what we were wondering all year long is, can you consistently have a slug that's like top 15, which is what they were earlier in the season, by just relying on doubles all year long? The answer is probably not.
No. And that's become their biggest problem. And it's been a problem. So it's not like this is much of a surprise, I would say. But to your point, like, you just don't have the pitching staff to overcome this, right? Like you mentioned the Tigers and their lack of a star, if you want to call Riley Green or Spencer Torkelson, and that was what the roundtable was talking about. But you know what they've got? They've got a dude leading the rotation in Skubal. You know, they've got Flaherty, that's a perfect number 2. And the Cardinals got Sonny Gray. He's a really good number 1 piece to have. But that's it. Like, there is no second piece next to him that you look at and say, okay, well, when that guy takes the mound, we feel good. We keep saying on this show when Fetty starts, like, don't tune in until the 6th inning when he's out of the ballgame, because it's not going to feel great. So when you don't have the pitching staff to overcome the lack of power and no swing and miss in that staff, it's just a recipe that it feels very hard to try and overcome.
314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line from the 618. BK, those final 3 at-bats yesterday with Scott, Walker, and Wynn were absolutely pathetic. The closer's fine. He finally found the fastball. Those are literally 3 guys that have to be relied on in those spots. That's the thing. Like, I don't know what the alternative was in those situations.
No, you did exactly what you were supposed to do in that spot.
Managed that game, I thought, really well yesterday.
Yeah.
He was aggressive. Maybe if you want to make the case, you could have made the case, and T-Bone, I know you did, in our group text of Pozo going in for Victor Scott potentially, but then you're all kinds of screwy when it comes to your defense in the next inning. And listen, like, they were going to be weird no matter what, because they had already put Gorman in the game, who was going to have to play third. You didn't have a DH, and they lost their DH, so maybe they were playing for Pozo to be that DH in the next inning. It was a rough spot no matter what, but I thought for the most part, Ollie managed the game really well. I thought he managed the weekend pretty well, all things considered, when it came to, like, when to pull his starters, who to go with in the bullpen. There's just only so many levers you can pull as the manager when your guys aren't executing. And right now, when Nootbaar is going through it like this, it changes everything about the lineup. I think that's one of the things that I've learned about this team.
Nootbaar when you don't have Donovan.
Even when you do, you need both of those guys. Mm-hmm. You desperately need that high on-base percentage at the top of your order to be paired with Donovan's batting average that he has in the middle of your order.
Yeah.
Because when Newt gets on at that high clip, well, he's getting on, you get to move him over potentially with Wynn, and then boom, Donnie comes through with the big clutch hit. He's the guy that's been coming through a ton this year, to your point, Alex, on the runners and scoring position stuff. They don't have that formula. That formula is gone, and when that goes out the window, you're just kind of turning your head, and everybody's looking like, okay, what do we do now? What's the solution? And the answer is they don't have one.
It's what happens when you have pack mentality. I mean, Blues experience that when you lose Dylan Holloway. You're like, wait, what happens when you take a massive piece of the engine out of your lineup? Well, everything else has to figure out how they had to adapt. You lose Donovan for the weekend, almost the weekend, until he comes back on Sunday, and you figure out how you have to adapt. And they did so on Saturday when they put up those 8 runs. But even beyond that, you start looking around and you're looking at pieces. I think more than anything, you're learning how important guys like Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar are to this lineup. Throw Mason Wynn into this category and Ivan Herrera. But you've got 5 or 6 guys that if one falls out, you start to wonder who's going to pick up the slack.
And so much of this is like, it's not even necessarily about the Cardinals so much as it is what's happening around them. And we mentioned this in our open, but I know some people don't listen to the open. They just kind of like drop into the segment. So it may sound like we're overly negative today and like we've flip-flopped from where we were 2 weeks ago, which, yeah, that's true. They were 8 games above 500 2 weeks ago. So I think flip-flopping at that point in time when you have new information is a fair thing to do. However, you're 72 games into the year. To put this in context, at this point last year, if you look at where the Cardinals were, because it was an easier threshold to be able to get in, 72 games in last year, they were 36-36, and they were right there in the wild card. Like, you were right there. The difference this year is now you're 3 games back, and you've got multiple teams between you and that final spot, and in the division, you're 7 games back. And that's what's made it more difficult. That's what makes it feel so bad right now is, man, the rest of the National League is running away from you. And there's just nothing you can do to be able to catch up because of how much further ahead they are. If the Cardinals were in the American League, do you know where they would be right now in the wild card standings?
I was just looking at this, so I know the answer.
Alex, you probably...
I haven't looked at it yet, no. So,
where do you think they would be if you changed nothing about their season thus far? The only thing you change is you flip them, and like the Royals are now in the National League Central, the Cardinals are in the AL Central.
they've got 37 wins. I got to imagine you're in one of those wild card spots, maybe the second wild card spot.
You're in the final wild card spot, and you're 1 game back of the Blue Jays for the second wild card spot right now.
And that's a team that we talked when they played the Blue Jays. It's kind of like the Spider-Man meme. You're pointing at each other.
And they were going through your version of May in the month of June. The Blue Jays are right now. Like, they're really hot. That could change. They just cooled down. They've lost their last 3, but they were really hot coming in here to St. Louis. And then, now they're in the second wild card slot. That's the difference. It's the context of your situation right now. We'd be talking very differently about this team if they were in the American League, but they're not.
Well,
and you have to beat your peers, and right now they're not finding a way to do that.
I think we should start a petition to get the Cardinals moved to the American League.
Hell yeah. I like the idea.
If you can't win with the Royals, then change the rules.
If you could choose your division, which one would you want?
AL Central. AL Central. Are you kidding me?
Who would you want to flip with? You're flipping with like the Guardians, probably.
Yeah, I don't want to see the Guardians. They pitch too well. They're like the Brewers. They can come to this division.
One of those two.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. We'll get into that coming up in 15 minutes. Katie Wu joins the show coming up at 12 for our regularly scheduled therapy session on a Monday afternoon. But coming up next, our favorite person in the world broke down all of the top centers on the market. Alex will give you his thoughts on Dom's latest piece next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals fell to the Brewers yesterday 3-2 as they dropped 3 of 4 from Milwaukee. They are off today as they travel up to Chicago, where tomorrow night they'll start a 3-game set with the Chicago White Sox. Matthew Liberatore will get the start for St. Louis. 6:40 will be first pitch tomorrow night. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 5 of the NBA Finals, as well as pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with tip-off at 7:30. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
It's always a good day when we can open up The Athletic, and Dom has written a new article. That was the case earlier this morning alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. NHL free agency deep dive, analyzing the top centers available on the market this year. Alex, you know I'm going to click on that, A, because I want to see if it's going to make you angry in any way, and B, because we've been talking about centers all offseason. So the top name available on the market, you all know him at this point in time, it is John Tavares, the center for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's hitting the market. He's 35 years old, and they have him projected to make about $8 million. Dom says over at The Athletic, he thinks an $8 million AAV for him is pretty good. It's pretty similar to what he thought about Joe Pavelski when he hit the market and ended up with Dallas. He thinks it'd be a good buy for somebody, but it sounds like he's likely to stick in Toronto. I saw earlier today, Alex, he could get a 6-year deal from Toronto.
Well, they're
at a more than $5 million AAV.
That's the wild part, because like the 6 years I could get if you're going to do like what Tampa did with Nick Paul, where it's like, hey, we'll get you, but we're going to give you $2 million AAV for the next 8 years.
So it's similar to that.
But
it would
$5
be
million for 6 years?
So
that dude's going to be 44.
I mean, think about it this way, though. If they're going to give him 8.5 for 4, it's $32 million. $8 million for 4 years, $32 million.
Yeah.
So if you do it for 6 instead, and you give him like 5.5 per, it's the same money, just over a longer period of time. They'll probably buy him out by the end of that thing anyways, and you just like stretch that as long as humanly possible to make sure that the cap hit is low.
I like Tavares, and I love the Joe Pavelski comp because it does seem very much like the Pavelski. If he were available, I'd look at it, but not for $8.5 million or 6 years at 5. So
I don't think the 6 years would be any other team other than Toronto.
Yeah,
I think it's the only one that he would probably do that with. All right, the next one up here is Sam Bennett. We've talked about him.
Let's move on.
He has now scored, what is it, 13 goals? 14 goals, excuse me, in 21 playoff games.
He and Marchand literally carrying the Florida Panthers to another Stanley Cup.
Dude, Marchand's just going to be able to like write a blank check.
Yeah, well, the report is that he does not care the team he signs with. It is whoever offers him the most money.
Sure. I mean, God bless him.
Congrats on being a Chicago Blackhawk.
Good time for him. All right, so Bennett, he says, Dom over at The Athletic, quote, the ceiling should probably be about $8 million with a contract that starts with 7 being more acceptable. Anything more would be reckless, end quote. He's probably going to just stick with Florida.
Yeah.
We can kind of move on from there. Do you have any thoughts about Matt Duchene? Or should we just move on?
I would move on. I know the numbers like him.
He said there are legitimate concerns about whether or not his game at this point in his career translates to the playoffs.
I always go back to Duchene. This is a guy that's been on like 5 different teams and just did not have the same success that he had in Dallas. Sometimes guys only work in particular markets with particular players. As much as I like the numbers of Matt Duchene for 35 years old and how much he's going to ask for in terms of years in AAV, I would say just move on.
All right, let's get to the next one. This is a guy that we've had a lot of conversations about. And me and T-Bone are on one side, and Alex is on a very different side. I've been saying his name wrong all along, and I apologize for that. He's 29 years old. He was with the Vancouver Canucks over the last couple of seasons, scored 25 goals this year, a consistent 30 to 40-point producer, but all of that is coming at 5-on-5, so there is value in it. Also excellent defensively, despite being slow and small. Not exactly the package you typically would expect that in, but here we are. Pius Suter?
Pius. Say it fast. Pius.
He's an excellent defensive player. He's projected to get about $5 million on the market this offseason, which sounds strange, but they made a comparison in this piece over at The Athletic of Suter with Anton Lundell, the third-line center for the Florida Panthers. They said, hey, listen, the comp is kind of there. They're both very good defensively. They both put up like 45 points on any given season. They're not expected to be top 6 players, and they can be contributors on winning organizations. Alex, the more that you have read, heard, listened to about Suter and his profile and what he could bring to his next team, is that a guy that you are now interested in for the Blues? Is he somebody that you think would be a good target for St. Louis?
Yeah, I've started to change my tone on this one, and I think it's because of the lack of good options on the free agent market and the uncertainty of the trade market. Now, I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying my first priority is still to go to the trade market and see if I can find a better option. Vegas right now apparently is the favorite to sign Mitch Marner, which means they're going to have to do some wheeling and dealing. So, I'm not ruling out the options of going to other teams and making trades for center. But in a hypothetical world, let's go to the fact that there's no trades out there. This is an upgrade over Sundqvist. Like this was the conversation, and Thomas Drance is the insider for The Athletic who covers the Canucks. He's the one that's kind of changed my opinion on this.
We should reach out to him this week.
Maybe we will. Maybe I already did, and I didn't tell you.
Cool.
I didn't, by the way. Anyway, so Jay Fresh was saying, look, this is a weird player, small, slow, not physical. He's spotty on faceoffs, but he also scored 5-on-5 goals at a higher rate than Brock Besser in the past 3 seasons and elite defensively. And then Thomas Drance chimed in and said he rocks, incredibly intelligent, can help absolutely any team win in 11 different spots in the lineup, only below average when cast as a one-line center, but the profile is completely unique. So I don't like the amount of money you're going to have to give to Pius Suter. I don't like the idea of giving him 3, 4, 5 years to get this player. But I also can't deny what he did for Vancouver this year when they traded away JT Miller. They moved him up to that second-line center role, and he was really good for them. 5-on-5 defensively. And when you think of what Doug Armstrong talked about, now he's not the offensive weapon that Doug mentioned in his press conference.
He's a 200-foot offensive weapon, I could argue, though.
And that's
15 goals, 40 points. If you can do that for this team, that's a huge upgrade over what they got from that position.
Yeah, and if the Anton Lindell is the comp you're going off of, like Lindell is the perfect third-line center. He can give you 20 goals, he can give you 40 to 50 points, but he's elite defensively for you. So I'm warming up to the idea. I will not be upset if this is the route that they go. I'm just going to have some very cautious skepticism because of the amount of years in AAV you're going to have to give this player.
I think people just need to understand what he is going into this. And don't expect more, but be accepting of what he is. And what he's not, like you live with that because you're not paying $8 million a year. What he is very good defensively. What he is a very good producer at 5-on-5. He's never going to put up 30 goals. Don't ever expect anything like that for him. But at 5-on-5 this past season, he scored 22 goals. The year before that, and this is probably more in line with what you can expect in St. Louis, it's 12 to 15 per season. You're talking about a 15-ish goal scorer that can distribute a little bit. And if he's got guys like Bolduc and Neighbors potentially on his line, you'd think that would have more opportunities there to potentially be even higher on the assist numbers.
To put this into context to what you just mentioned, he played with Nils Hollander and Connor Garland last year.
Sure. So, yeah, maybe
it's like 23 goals.
20 goals, 25 assists. Dude, I would sign up for that for $5 million like that. Yeah. And he's 29 years old next year. So you're signing up for, even if it's a 4 or 5 year deal, the prime of his career. Now, I do think there's questions to be asked on, is that something that you want for that long? Are the Blues locking themselves into a contract that a few years from now you're not going to love? Maybe. But any of these contracts that you signed in free agency are likely to age less than gracefully. I think he, for me, would be my top free agent in terms of the realistic guys. Set aside Tavares, set aside Sam Bennett. I think Suter would be my top free agent acquisition for the Blues this offseason, given the price, the age, the production, and where he would fit into this lineup. I think he makes all the sense in the world for this team.
There are concerns for me, like the speed factor. Like Jim Montgomery likes to play fast. Does his slow pace at center hinge this team? I can't imagine so, because they found success with Shen and they used success with Foxa. It comes down to how speedy your wingers are. That's part of it. What happens when you're put with a different system and a different group of guys compared to what you've been for the last couple of years with Vancouver? There's concerns, but there's concerns with any of these free agent signings. Like Mikael Granlund is another one that's out there. I'm concerned about that because he's not good defensively, and I don't think he's an everyday centerman for
Are you talking about JR's number one free agent acquisition?
Yeah, JR and I are going to have a conversation on Wednesday on the Last Minute Blues podcast.
There are higher profile free agents such as Marner or Bennett who would help the Blues, but if the club just secured itself a reliable center such as Granlund, it would serve the Blues well because they'd be much deeper up the middle. At 33 years old, he could help hold down the fort while Dalibor Dvorsky is waiting in the wings.
T-Bone, I think, said this best in the office. I'm once again not going to be upset if they get Granlund. By the way, you didn't like the nickname of Sweats on Friday. Granlund's nickname is Granny. So
that one makes more sense.
Well, I don't know if I want to be called
my
Granny.
guy Granny and
His last name is Granlund. What do you want?
Well, that's fine, but like, can we come up
I
with
like Bruce better. The nickname.
Bruce is much better. Thanks, hockey reference. Look, I wouldn't be upset with this. I have a lot more questions about Granlund than I do with Suter. Granlund is smaller than Suter. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. So, like, although Suter's 5'11", 180 pounds. So, kind of the same there. Granlund, to me, just isn't the playmaking, offensive driving centerman. Like, I always look at how competitive teams use that player, and Dallas used him as a winger. And he's up there in age.
About the defense. That's
he's
what I worry
bad
about.
Defensively, too.
If you want somebody, I mean, he's a consistent 60-point producer lately. If you want somebody that's going to put offense, he's going to put up offense for you. I really have concerns about how he would be viewed defensively in this organization. And if you have concerns defensively at age 32, that typically doesn't get better as you get into your age 33, 34, 35 seasons.
I think he's better as a winger.
I think so, too, and I don't think this team needs a winger.
Nope. I would go a guy that's... Now, you might want a guy that turns... Because that's why I like Jared McCann. Give me a couple of years at center and then move him to wing because Dvorsky will be ready at that position. But McCann would have been 31 when you're shifting him to wing. Granlund, we're talking about 35 years old at wing, and I mean, I'm assuming this one's going to have to be 4+ years as well. So I would much rather go Suter than Granlund, and then like when it comes to free agents, Taves would be number one, Suter there, and then after that, just stay the hell away from free agency.
I would rather have Suter than Taves, and it's not close for me. Yeah. Just because I'm locking in the certainty. I want something that I know is going to work. The Blues' problem right now is the lack of certainty as that third-line center. They just don't have it right now. I think Suter provides that. I do not think that you can reasonably expect Taves to come in and just pick up where he left off 5 years ago. And the last time that we saw him, he was not good in the NHL.
And that's where it's not so much the player where we disagree. We disagree, I think, on the fact of you guys think it would be a failure if you come back with the same roster. And that's my mindset with Taves. I'd take the chance on Taves and hope that he is really good for you. And if he's not, I'm fine with Sundqvist as my third-line center for another year.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that at all. If you want to be a playoff team again and you want to improve from what you were a year ago, I don't think you can reasonably expect to do so with Oscar Sundqvist as your third-line center. Last thing that I wanted to get to here in this piece, it's the first time that I've seen any kind of a projection for Blues pending UFA fourth-line center Radek Faksa. He basically says, listen, if you want a defensive-minded fourth-line center, there is no better one in the league than Radek Faksa. He also adds it's going to cost about $1.5 million. That's the expectation for his market this offseason. If that's the case, Alex, I don't know where you stand on this. He's 32. Give him a 2-year deal worth $3 million in total. I'd be more than comfortable doing that for Radek Faksa.
Yeah, if that's the price, you can't let him go to the free agent market. You can't let him get signed by another team for $1.5 million. I mean, that's what Sundqvist is making right now. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Sundqvist's best role for this team is a 13th forward, as a guy that you could use in and out of the lineup. Give me a Faksa for $1.5 million who is there every single night and is effective for you. Then your identity line is set. That is what most competitive teams are searching for when they get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Having an identity line that they can focus on. Florida acquired a guy that fit for that identity line in Marchand. You've already got it. Bring the guy back, multi-year. I would go 2 years and $1.5 million and say my fourth line's good for the next couple of years.
I've got my concerns on the roster, like how you make that work post-signing Faksa and acquiring hopefully a third-line center, but that's something for Doug Armstrong to figure out. That's his job, and he's not concerned about making those hard decisions. If he made 2 moves forward-wise this offseason, I have to imagine he's got some kind of a plan in place to be able to move on from one of the contracts that's currently there. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll talk to Katie Wu, our Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She joins us as she does each and every Monday on the show. But coming up next, it's time for questions and answers. 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers is next. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them in right now. We do have this report coming out from Talkin' Baseball. According to their sources with the Giants, Rafi Devers has told San Francisco, I'm willing to play anywhere, including first base, whatever it is that helps the team win.
Just to stick it to Boston. Just to stick it to them.
That's amazing. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 636. Guys, what did you think about Gorman bunting in the 9th yesterday? I was cool with it, but I saw a lot of people complaining because obviously he has the potential to hit you the home run there. That was fine.
We know I love it.
I was going to say T-Bone.
Yeah. Hey, you need
Isn't that the one thing people used to complain about with Matt Carpenter was like the guy would have the ultimate shift and never bunt the ball down the left side.
I mean, it was perfectly executed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Gorman's doing what people were complaining other guys wouldn't do. Yeah, he's got the potential to hit the benches, but he's also got the potential to strike out, make contact.
I think the tough part there is you've got Walker and Scott coming up. That's the downside here is what's coming after you and the little faith that you would potentially have if you're in Ollie's shoes of them coming through in those spots. Because if Gorman let's say he moves the runner over, because it's a sack bunt. He got on with it, but it's a sack bunt. You move Arenado over, Nootbaar is in there, and he's now at second. Okay, you've got Walker and Scott coming up with one out to be able to get that guy in. What's your level of confidence that they're going to be able to push him in? I wouldn't say it's overly high, but, I mean, he did his job and moved the runner over. You had runners in scoring position with no outs with 3 guys coming up. Yeah. You've got to be able to get them in.
Yeah, and then that comes down to as well, to your point, like if it's a sack bunt or it was an attempted sack bunt, it became a hit, I would have assumed they were going with Pozo over Scott, right? Like I would have thought they were going to just be super aggressive with it and say, hey, we've got the game-winning or the potential go-ahead run on base, so why not go ahead and swing the bat with one of our best option right now off of our bench. They decided not to do that, which is what makes it a little more puzzling.
I got fake account duped.
I just want you to remember this moment, because when you give us ish on the radio when we do it, God bless it. This happens to everybody. Brandon.
Oh, man. It's a fake Talkin' Baseball account. I'm sorry.
Click on the profile next time.
It was believable. That's the worst part. That's the best kind of parody, is when it's actually a believable thing coming out that you think is going to be real.
You know what's really believable? When you verify the account.
I know. That's on me. I apologize. I've got to be better. That's on me. I'm sorry. What I said about Rafael Devers, that's not a real quote.
He's actually demanding to play third base.
Yeah, can you imagine? He's like, I have decided I am an outfielder.
I have decided that I'd like to be a pitcher.
All right, 314-399-9646.
Is this one going to be fake accounted?
Line from the 618. Guys, do you think that the Blues will extend Cam Fowler this offseason?
Not this offseason. Maybe in season, if things are going well. Probably next offseason. Because if he's here and he's having success, if you're the Blues, you're thinking, okay, well, you've rejuvenated your career from where you were in Anaheim. This team's trending in the right direction. Why wouldn't you want to stay here? So I don't think that's I don't even think that's on the conversation list unless Fowler's team comes to the Blues and says, we want to re-sign.
Yeah, I don't think they do it this offseason. If he plays well, he feels like a perfect Olympic break deadline or Olympic break extension candidate for Doug Armstrong.
Would I do it? No. Do I think they'll do it? Yes, I do. I mean, everything in their history suggests when they get a guy at the deadline that they clearly value and then he plays well for them, they re-sign that guy. They did it with Scandella. They did it with Nick Leddy. I would not be surprised at all if they do the exact same thing this time around with Cam Fowler. And I would strangely feel more comfortable with this one than I did either of those two. The other two, I flat out said, I don't think you should have done this. If they decide to extend Cam Fowler, it will depend on the years, but I'll say, yeah, I get it. It's not my favorite move, but I get it. I understand why you get yourself there. From the 314, guys, do you see a potential bidding war for Ryan Helsley due to the potential number of buyers at the trade deadline? Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I think you have to, regardless of where you're positioning, now it's looking a little bit more easy to make the decision. You've got to answer the phones no matter what.
Yeah, he's going to end up in a massive bidding war. Now, he's got to start pitching better. Eventually, he's got to start getting through these things with zeros. Gave up another home run over the weekend. That's now back-to-back outings in which he has given up a home run. That's concerning, but the strikeouts are still there. The walks are way down. I'm not overly worried about it, and I have to imagine if I'm another contender, I'd look at it and be like, we can figure this out. We'll be fine.
Yeah. I think, and the other nice part about him is because he is, one, a rental, and two, won't be making a ton of money by that point of the season. Every team in baseball can afford him, right? Like if the Cleveland Guardians said, we could use a closer, the Guardians could go out and make this trade. The Rays, we've seen the Rays when they are in it, they're willing to push a little bit. The Rays could go out and acquire a Ryan Helsley as well.
Yeah, any of these teams, the Cubs would be interested, I have to imagine. I don't know that you're going to be moving him in division, but they would be a team that's interesting for this. Giants, Padres, Dodgers are always in this mix. I think the Phillies make all the sense in the world for a guy like Ryan Helsley. Like, there's going to be probably 5 to 7 teams that are seriously considering Ryan Helsley. When you have that many teams bidding on a player, that's how you get a massive return. So Cardinals could get something similar to what Tanner Scott got last year, which is 2 legit pitching prospects in return for Ryan Helsley. Coming up in 15 minutes, Boston, as you can probably imagine, is losing its collective mind today. We'll let you hear from some of the Boston sports radio reaction from earlier this morning. That's coming up in 15 minutes. Katie Wu, Cardinals Insider, joins us next here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it was not a good weekend for the Cardinals. Has not been a good month for the Cardinals thus far. We talk it all over with the Cardinals insider for The Athletic, Katie Woo, joining us as she does each and every Monday here on the show. Katie, the Cardinals have lost, 7 of their last 8 now? The one win came on Saturday, which was a good one, and then yesterday felt like maybe they could come up on the winning side of things and just couldn't come through in the 9th. Appreciate the time as always. How you doing today?
Hey, guys. Well, on the bright side, it's a beautiful day in Chicago. On the downside, the June swoon is here for the St. Louis Cardinals, and this is something that we had been warned about, right? After May, when the Cardinals went 19-8, best record in baseball, Ollie Marmol went out and said, hey, look, this June schedule is going to be tough for us. We don't have a lot of off days. We have some guys that are hitting some slumps and starting to, I don't know, maybe plateau or have the opposing team adjust to what they're doing. We're going to find out a lot about our team in this month, and so far they have. There are a multitude of factors, I think, that are contributing to this stretch for St. Louis. And the schedule does play into it, but as Nolan Arenado said after Sunday's loss, every team goes through schedule stretches like this, and there really are no excuses. I'm more looking at certain players who are slumping, Lars Nootbaar, Victor Scott II, what the team looks like without Brendan Donovan. Thankfully, he's back because that did not look good. And how the Cardinals are balancing their rather limited depth and positional flexibility to ensure that they can put their best 9 guys on the field every day. It's been quite the challenge lately to do that.
So, I blanked on this. BK, I just lost my question. Will you take it?
Go
Sorry.
ahead. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Also, good start, guys.
I know. I'm sorry.
You asked at the beginning of that, you said we were going to find out some things. What have we learned about the Cardinals during this 8-game stretch, in your opinion? Beyond just hey, Brendan Donovan, really good at baseball. You kind of need that guy.
Yeah, kind of great analysis from me there. I think what we're looking at is if the Cardinals have a way to play their 9 every day, they're a good team, right? You look at even if they have guys that are something like Nootbaar, like Victor Scott, they have a way to play their regulars every single day. It works because then you have Nolan Gorman coming off the bench, and he's playing much better baseball lately. But the second that the Cardinals have to work in these off days because they're not getting in the schedule, or the second that some of these guys are slumping and they need days off, you're really seeing just how thin their options are there. The Cardinals, as constructed, were the perfect team in May because they have that off day every 7 days. With just 2 off days in June, and today being the last one until July 3rd, you have to build in days off and rest for these guys. And you don't really feel like you can do that. Like Lars Nootbaar is a perfect example. Clearly not right. Clearly going through some things at the plate. Ollie felt like he could not take Lars out of the lineup, though, because there aren't very many, viable solutions behind him. It took an 0-for-5 day with 4 strikeouts, where I think Lars' OPS for June dropped below 350, for Ollie to say, okay, I have to take him out. He's going through it. This is hurting him to play every day at this point. Victor Scott II could probably use that same kind of treatment, but who are they going to put in that lineup defensively that's going to make up for what he brings on that side of the ball? I think the Cardinals have such one-dimensional pieces, right? And we can break this down a step further. Ivan Herrera was supposed to be the starting catcher every day, but Pedro Paz has emerged as the much better defensive option. And if you take him out of the game, you lose a lot of what you've gained defensively from positioning, from pitch calling, across the board. Now, they can't take Herrera's bat out of the lineup either, so he becomes a DH. Well, where does that leave Nolan Gorman? If you want to play him every day, you're putting him at second. Brendan Donovan is the better second baseman by a long shot. So if you want to play Gorman every day and Herrera every day, that puts Donovan in the outfield, where he is far less superior defensively than a Nootbaar or a Victor Scott II. So trying to make all of that work has not been easy, and we're seeing the fallout of it in June.
All of that I agree with you on, Katie. Some of it, like the off days, for example, they knew this was coming. They knew they were going to need more off days for some of their primary players. And this was the worst that the bench had looked all season long. Like they had the fewest options, especially from the right side, as they had all year long. Some of that is on their own roster construction, right? Like they could have called up Thomas Saggese, and they chose not to. They could have called up a guy like Lucan Baker, who mashes against left-handed pitchers. Don't look at his numbers against righties, it's not good. But against lefties, really good. They could have done that, and they chose not to. Isn't some of that on their own doing? And I'm not blaming Ollie, but like the front office?
Some of it, yeah. Some of it is roster construction, and some of it is player performance. Going to choose to be shorthanded without Brendan Donovan, I could see both sides of that, because you don't want to lose him for more than you have to. And if you put him on the IL, obviously you're going to miss him for a lot longer than the 4 games that the Cardinals did. So that was a choice that they made to play with a shorthanded bench that became even worse when they said, okay, we have to sit Newbar for a couple days to get him right. They're without Jordan Walker for the first 13 days of June, who was playing a much better side of the ball offensively. That didn't help either when you look at their bench. Now they're looking and bringing up, Ryan Blade. That didn't really work out so well. So, yeah, the choices that they've made have not been good. The player performances, when you have players that are down, have also not been good. This is probably the worst. Obviously, he's not choosing to do this. This is probably the worst possible time for Newbar to hit a skid or Victor Scott to hit a skid, right? Because you're playing without some valuable players like Donovan and Walker. So it's a combination of both. I totally agree with the off days. They knew what they were coming into. They also knew what their options looked like in AAA. Not super deep as we're seeing, and it's kind of made into this perfect storm for St. Louis.
Katie, the one area that I like to judge the Cardinals on the last couple of years, the reason I've fallen off that bandwagon has been the runners in scoring position. And for the longest time this season, I've been able to defend that. And it's not just against the Brewers series, but really since the month of June has begun, you're starting to see that area slump. Is that just the fatigue and the lack of options with injuries, or is this starting to be a little bit more of a long-term concern?
I think it's the first option, definitely. You look at what the Cardinals are able to do with their bottom part of the lineup. Victor Scott can get on base. He has game-changing speed. We talked about it. Well, game-changing speed really only plays when you are on base, and he's had trouble getting there. Then you have Lars Nootbaar, who usually has exceptional plate discipline and is able to get on base, whether that's by working a walk or making some contact. And all of a sudden you have runners in motion. Then Mason Wynn, Brennan Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Herrera come up. You know the rest. Because those two have struggled to kind of work as the double leadoff, is how I like to describe Victor Scott once that lineup turns over, it's put a lot of pressure on the heart of the order to contribute. And, well, I think some players have done a nice job. Contreras looks good. Herrera looks good. Being without Donovan for this series, for most of the series, really hurt how the lineup was constructed because now you have Alec Burleson playing up when he has a bat that profiles much lower in the lineup for more success. It just kind of felt like they were playing with trying to solve a puzzle, but they didn't have enough pieces. And when you do that, you get swept by the Blue Jays and you lose 3 or 4 to the Brewers, and all of a sudden you're looking at this White Sox series as a must-get-right series. And then you're looking at the homestand with the Reds and the Cubs as a true turning point for their season. It's no secret the Cardinals need to get back on track fast.
We're talking to Katie Woo for another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. Katie, we mentioned this earlier today, and it's not just the Cardinals' losses that are starting to pile up. It's also everything that's happening around them. If you put the Cardinals in the American League, today they would be in the playoffs. They would have that final wild card spot. But in the National League, you're 3 games back of the Padres for that wild card spot. You've got the Brewers in front of you before you get to that spot. And in the division, you're tied for 4th with the Reds. You're 7 games back of the Cubs. And beyond all of that, the Giants yesterday made a huge move to go acquire Rafael Devers. When you look at where the Cardinals are at, are they starting to potentially settle in as a seller in your mind in this National League race?
That's why I think this next week at home, this homestand is so important, because we know that so much of the Cardinals' trade deadline decisions hinge on how they play into the All-Star break. And I don't think this organization wants to sell, even though it's probably in their best interest long term. I think the question that Mo was always weighing is, can we continue to build for the future and also push to win now and continue being a competitive club? And the next 3 weeks are going to dictate that. So you're also taking into consideration, you're right, not just how the Cardinals are playing and how they look. You're taking into consideration the rest of the league. If the Cubs, who are doing all of this, by the way, without Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga, but without that, they're just going to get better. I know Justin Steele's going to be gone for the rest of the season, but Shota should be coming back in the next 2 weeks. They look legit, and they should be buyers at the deadline. Then you're weighing, if you're going to be out of it in the division, are you in the wild card? Is that worth it to go and maybe deviate a little bit from your long-term plans? These are the questions the front office is weighing right now. The Cardinals could make it easy on them if they continue their June swoon, where it looks like, okay, they probably should just offload some expiring talent. But if they can turn it around against the White Sox, which they should do, and then have a better homestand than what we've seen in June, then I think they're going to continue weighing that decision.
I know this is down the road, Katie, and we'll have plenty of time to talk to it, but just in a hypothetical world, if it does get to that, do you think it's just expiring contracts that get shipped out, or is there something potentially bigger that the Cardinals could or should do?
For right now, it would make sense to just be expiring contracts because let's remember, this is not the team that John Mozeliak will have any say over come October. It's Chaim Bloom's team, and Mo is going to be operating the trade deadline. These are his decisions. Bloom is available for consultation if needed, but the trade deadline and the major league talent, that is a John Mozeliak decision. So, in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Mo to come in and really take away from anything more than what they know they're going to be losing at the end of the year. Now, if they decide to have a change of heart and all of a sudden Heim is more available in those discussions, then maybe. But right now it looks like we're going to see something similar if they do sell to what we saw in 2023, where it's offloading talent, doing some minor incremental improvements, and then when Heim Bloom takes over at the offseason, then maybe we'll see some significant change.
Katie, I know you're a Bay Area girl at heart. You saw the news yesterday that Rafael Devers was going to be traded to the Giants. What was your reaction, just as a baseball fan and somebody from the area? What was your reaction to that trade as you saw it come down?
Honestly, guys, I rarely see in this crazy industry a move or a trade where I stop in my tracks and what is going on? And as I'm getting on the train to go from Milwaukee to Chicago, I get the alert and I stop in my tracks and I was like, wait, Rafael Devers? And the first thing I did was text my dad and I was like, are you seeing this? He would have any idea. Obviously, it just broke. Right. And it was just shocked me. And those kinds of moves never happen anymore because as we know in this industry, we're used to some wild things. That one stopped me in my tracks. I know my Giants friends back home blew my phone up, and I was like, guys, I don't know anything either. I'm just as confused as you are. So it was exciting. I mean, a good shakeup in June for two big profile teams and obviously a superstar.
Do you think that the return was light? Do you think it was about right? What did you think of the return that they gave up?
I thought that return was very light. But clearly there was some things going on behind the scenes where the Red Sox felt like they needed to make that move right now. That's really the only explanation I have for it.
It's wild. We've got some sound that we're going to hear in the next segment. As you can imagine, Boston Sports Radio was none too kind to the Red Sox today. So we'll be hearing that coming up here in just a minute. Katie, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy yourself up there in Chicago this week. We'll talk with you again next week, hopefully as the Cardinals get this thing back on track.
You got it, guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. You got it. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate her time as always. Alex, what do you think about that? You asked the question of, should the Cardinals just be exploring the expiring deals? Should they consider something bigger than that? Where do you fall? I know what we think they will do. What do you think they should be looking to do?
I think she's right that they should just get rid of expiring contracts, because if this is Mo's trade deadline, I'd much rather have Heim Bloom making those decisions. Now, if Bloom's in the room and can help with this, I don't think it's the end of the world if you explore what's out there for guys that you're starting to learn a little bit more about, like Nolan Gorman, in my opinion. I think I'd be looking at potentially what's out there. Now, maybe you wait until after the season and the offseason, you can explore a bigger package, but it's rare you see Devers-esque trades take place in the middle of the season. It's why people were so surprised. But, man, you've just got a lot of pieces that I'm starting to wonder if you're getting answers on this runway. And if you've got the answers that you don't believe they're a part of the future, what's out there for them?
I could see something with Gorman, maybe.
Like he becomes a package with one of the expiring contracts you're offloading to up the return of the prospects that are coming in return.
I could see something like that. I could also just see him going for a prospect at the deadline, right? Like a team
get as many as possible.
Basically, they would be getting their head start on their offseason the same way that you are. Like it could even be another seller. That is like, hey, we sold our third baseman. Let's go buy on Nolan Gorman. We'll bring him in, and this becomes a piece that, hey, maybe it works for us long term. It could be similar to what the Cubs did last year, where they end up making that moves with the Rays, where they traded for Paredes, and then they used Paredes in the offseason to flip for Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
I could see Gorman being a piece like that for another team that's in this like middling to lower level spot. Other than that, though, I don't see many pieces that would fall into that category. Maybe one of your bullpen arms, like maybe JoJo, maybe John King, somebody like that could get you a little something. It's more of a lottery ticket than anything meaningful, though.
Here's another question.
That's kinda it.
Would you view this deadline as quality versus quantity of prospects? Because like a couple of years ago, last year, when they made all the trades that they did, that felt like they were going quantity-wise.
I mean, it depends. Like, I think every trade is valued a little differently. The only trade that I'm going to be viewing it as quality, though, would be probably Helsley. I don't know what else you're going to get.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm asking. Rather than make four trades of just guys individually, would you look at one big trade with Ryan Helsley?
I mean, you can. You're already getting that quality for Helsley no matter what.
Yeah.
If you can get a better return by including somebody else, like if you could get a better return by including Steven Matz in a deal with Helsley, sure, yeah, absolutely consider doing something like that. But the only one that you're getting something of significance for, similar to that deal at the deadline where Jordan Montgomery was the chip that you could play, that chip for you this year is Helsley. Everything else is like, hey, you get a lottery ticket for it. That's it. And you'd be happy about it because it's something that you didn't have previously, right? Sometimes those chips cash in. Like the deal that the Cardinals made with the Orioles, Zach Showalter was a part of that. He is still very far away. He looks like a real arm, though. And at the time, I was like, hey, this is lottery ticket prospects that they're getting here. I don't know if it'll ever cash in for them. But if it does, found money. And you might have an arm that probably plays into their bullpen 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing that I think you're hoping to get in return for, like, Steven Matz, Miles Michaelis, anybody else that you end up dealing at. Maton could get you a little something. I think he could be a decent chip for you at the deadline, but yeah, I don't think you're getting like big quality returns at the trade deadline. Those just don't exist really anymore in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's only the pieces like Kelsley that end up going for that, or potentially, I don't know if he'll get this, like Alcantara with Miami. Like, those are the only guys that end up doing that. I would
Luis Castillo a few years ago got a pretty significant haul.
I would listen, and this one depends on what the player wants, but I would listen on Sonny Gray, right? If Sonny says, hey, I'm open to a trade, I would listen to him. I'm not saying it's like, hey, you must trade him. You have to be open-minded to that, right? Because he could get you a pretty good haul as well. He's got control on the contract, and he's also a guy that like fits into a rotation. Like if a team is looking at the rotation going, boy, we could use a guy to pair with our number one, Sonny Gray's that guy.
My downside to that is you better have a plan for next year. Because if you don't have Sonny, you have nobody in that spot. And it's not easy, as we know, to acquire those kinds of arms.
I think that just admits like you're in a retool, whatever, and I think you just move
with
that
Sonny,
on.
you might not have to be.
Oh, I think next year they're probably in it if they're sellers at the deadline.
I don't know. I don't know that to be true at all. Because the guys that we're talking about them selling off, I think you could, other than Helsley, reasonably replace internally.
Yeah.
I think there are not all that difficult moves that you could make to be able to replace Eric Fetty and like Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, Phil Maton. You can go find those guys, whether it be a free agency or people that you already have within your organization. You don't have anybody that can replace somebody like a Sonny Gray. And you probably will not be going to acquire anybody that replaces Sonny Gray. Did want to mention one other thing here real quick. I asked her about the roster construction thing. Dude, Thomas Ajacey in his last 13 games is batting .444. He is 24 for 54.
Is he getting any outfield reps?
I can't imagine. I will have to look that up to be certain one way or the other.
That's part of the roster construction problem.
He's getting on base more than 50% of the time.
Yeah, that guy should be on this roster.
What are we doing with Jose Barrero? Yesterday, that's a spot start for Mason Wynn. That should have been a spot for Thomas Ajacey. You went up against a bunch of lefties, and Sajacey's not great against lefties, don't get me wrong, but he's better than some of the options that you have available up here. It's just very confusing to me why they continue to go about it this way, but neither here nor there. Coming up in 15 minutes, the Brewers continue to do one thing better than the Cardinals do really much of anything. But next, you guys want to listen to some Boston sports radio? As you can probably imagine, they're going through it today. We'll let you hear it next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So I was listening to some Boston sports radio this morning, WEEI and the Sports Hub. Alex, as you can probably imagine, they were none too thrilled about the fact
In Boston?
that Rafael Devers was traded for a return that they don't seem to believe is worthwhile for his services. So let's go ahead and take a listen. I've got a couple of things from the host and a couple of callers that we're going to take a listen to as well. All of this courtesy of Boston Sports Radio. Let's start out with some of the hosts not exactly loving the trade.
This is the dumbest trade, I think, since I've been on the air in Boston. Because usually I'll fight against, especially with the Red Sox, because Red Sox fans annoy me with their negativity. But this one is mind-boggling in every argument, like the one Hardy sent me from the guy with the Red Sox, what Dan's saying, which is obviously what he's hearing from the Red Sox. You know, argue. But none of the arguments make any sense. They don't, and I'm not being obstinate. They just don't make sense.
Alex, when you think about the trade, one of the things that it would bother me if I was a Red Sox fan today is, okay, so we traded Rafael Devers, and in return, we get like a mid-rotation starter, a guy that projects to maybe be like a slightly above league average outfielder on a day-in, day-out basis. Jordan Hicks, who at this point in his career, I know he's been starting, he's a setup man, and a lottery ticket pitching prospect. That's what we got in return. For Rafael Devers, who's 40% above league average offensively, and every year you can write in pen 30 homers, 100 ribbies. That's what we got for him? And there is some ghost of trades past happening here, because you're looking back to the Mookie Betts deal and you're like, wait, but look at the deal that we got for Mookie, and that amounted to a whole hell of a lot of nothing for us. We doing the same thing all over again here? So I'm with him. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. My immediate reaction was, that's it? That's what they got for Rafael Devers? And then I thought about it from the Cardinals' perspective of, could the Cardinals have done this? And the answer is no. It made zero sense for the Cardinals to make this deal. They don't have a spot for Devers. But, dude, I'm surprised nobody else was willing to offer more for a guy that is this good of a hitter just to be a DH.
Especially for the teams interested. Like the reports of the Braves and the Padres and the Blue Jays all being interested. Like, I got to think at least two of those teams have pieces that would have met or exceeded what San Francisco was willing to offer. I mean, my first thought was looking at this, and yeah, I'd be frustrated too if I was a person in Boston, because, I mean, this is more of a, what the hell are you doing? Is this just a full-blown rebuild, blow it up move than the Mookie Betts one? Because the Mookie Betts one, I mean, I get it. Like, you don't like that, but
Mookie was them being cheap.
Yeah, he was due a contract, and you knew what was happening. They weren't willing to pay him. This guy's under contract, and he's 28 years old. Just traded away a MVP conversation player every single season for what? A young left-handed arm that may or may not be good, and a middle-of-the-order pitcher? This one, if as a fan, I'd be like, I need answers from ownership in the front office of what's taking place.
Somebody on the text line said, do you guys think this helps Heim's public image of trading Betts? No.
Nothing helps your public image.
Nothing's going to change that. But I do think it speaks to like the importance of communication. It seems like that's really what broke down here, is a lack of communication. And I think what you've seen with the Cardinals is they're pretty good at that stuff for the most part. They've had their moments, especially in recent seasons, where that hasn't been the case. But I would say this year, I think the communication seems to be in a much better spot. All right, let's listen to the next one up. This is something that I think will certainly play to this fan base.
Stop defending this ownership group.
I'm not defending the ownership
exhausting.
group.
They are a disaster. They are dishonest. They take advantage of the people that we talk to every single day by being fake, fraudulent, absolute
We're not
charlatans.
talking about that. We're not talking about that.
Can it be about both, though, when it comes to Rafi?
Right, but there has to be something that kicks off something.
Right.
So what I said that kicked off this thing.
The attitude of the player are the same, and he's making $2 million. He's still here.
Man, I wouldn't be able to handle Boston radio for how much people interrupt each other. There's a lot of talking over, everyone yelling.
I think that fits our show kind of well.
Yeah, but you know how we get.
BK did a whole segment by himself.
Angry. We just stopped talking. We turned our mics off.
They called their owner a charlatan. Like that happened on Boston Sports Radio today. Who do you think is more mad with their ownership? Boston sports fans right now, or St. Louis sports
Boston
fans? Talking about the Cardinals.
Yeah, Boston. Yeah. I mean, as much as people don't like the DeWitts, they didn't just trade away a superstar.
It feels pretty similar. And what I mean by that is, like, the Cardinals aren't trading their superstars away, but they have just stopped acquiring the superstars.
I think we're mad. Cardinals fans are mad at the front office / ownership because
they're unwilling to go spend the money in free agency and pay for those guys, and they can't develop those guys, I would put Boston in front of St. Louis because they have the guys. They are developing the guys. They get them signed. And then they say, no.
Do they, though?
Well, Mookie they didn't, but they got Devers signed.
They didn't do it with Bogarts. They didn't do it with Mookie.
Bogarts might have been the good move, though.
They got Devers, and then they traded him, 3 years later? I mean, it hasn't been that long. I think some of this is kind of similar to what we're going through here in St. Louis, where they are a historically prominent franchise, right? With a important and historic ballpark where they consistently get, that place is sold out. And they're not reinvesting in the way that Red Sox fans would like, and they've gone from a perennial World Series contender to a team that occasionally will compete for the playoffs. And since 2018, really haven't even done a whole lot of that at times. I think there's a lot of similarities between what the Red Sox are going through right now and what the Cardinals are going through right now. It's on different scales because Boston is a bigger market, so just by virtue of that, they're going to have a bigger payroll, or you would expect them to. I think there are a lot of similarities between the Cardinals and the Red Sox right now. The Cardinals just haven't done that. They haven't traded away the superstar. That's probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, I would say it's probably Red Sox for me that would get the advantage when it comes to who hates their ownership more, just because of what you said there. They've been the ones that have traded away the superstars. Now, and they didn't sign Bogarts. That one's probably a blessing in disguise. But when you are the Boston bleeping Red Sox, and to your point on a big market, there's no excuse for Mookie Betts to ever leave town, right?
Exactly.
Same with Rafi Devers, and they got that deal done. I don't necessarily blame them for trading him because of what the issues are probably in that clubhouse with him. But still, this is an organization like the Cardinals. If they had a Mookie Betts, for example, on the roster and he gets towards free agency, I could see how the Cardinals don't end up signing that guy, right? They're more of a middle market team. It's a lot harder for them to kind of stomach that kind of a deal, especially for what he ended up signing for. Boston, there's no excuse. No 100%. Team on the coast should ever be able to let that guy walk out of town.
All right, let's listen to a couple of callers.
In my opinion, I think the ownerships are cowards. They don't come out and say actually what they're trying to do. They're actually, in today's times and how much it costs to go and pay for a hot dog, pay for a ticket for a family of four, I think it's doing a disservice to these people, and they should boycott this team because as much as it costs to go see a game, if you're not putting those players out in the field to go see a team, why would you spend your hard-earned money to go see this?
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
All right.
Now this, you take the Boston accent out, and I could say that's a St. Louis caller right there.
Yeah, let's hear number two.
Hey, Curtis, don't get too upset yet. You know what's coming this offseason? The old big acquisition for the Red Sox is going to be Tristan Cassis coming back from injury. Get ready for it. It's coming.
Also heard that one before.
Alex made that comment. You can't convince me that's not Alex calling into Boston Sports Radio. That is 100% something you'd say about the Cardinals.
That might be the most infuriating comment from a general manager every year when you approach the trade deadline. Well, we got these guys coming back from injuries. It's like making a trade. I think they do it now because they know it pisses people off.
I'd believe that. I hate
it's a great take, though.
Being in a market where this is what's happening and you don't really understand what the plan is, that's the worst. Because if you're a Boston Red Sox fan today, dude, we're like a half game out of the playoffs. We've won 8 out of the last 10. Devers seem to be in a better spot. This is all kind of, you called up Roman Anthony, who everybody wanted to see, right? We've had some real success here. And now you trade him a month and a half before the deadline? You didn't have to do anything. And you willingly choose to do so for a return that I would say universally has been, less than stellar would be the common theme among people. They're like, I guess it's fine. Mm-hmm. More so than it is that's overwhelming. And you make that move now? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
A lot of people I've seen on our YouTube chat, the Graveyard, talking about it's it's probably good for Boston. They got rid of a locker room problem. Maybe he is. It sounds like he was a pretty big issue in terms of a head case in there. Sometimes, though, you trade head cases and the guy gets better where he goes, where it's not a lot of soap opera drama, and the team is still in a worse spot.
Yeah, you know what you need? You need good players, and this guy's a really freaking good player.
That's where it comes down for me with the whole locker room thing, and we've had this conversation a billion times on our show through the years. Okay, sure, he probably is an issue, right? He's clearly not a team guy. He's not willing to pick up a glove and go learn a new position. But, you know how freaking hard it is to hit a baseball? Look at the Cardinals lineup. Look how hard it is for them to get by without having a star, and you've got that guy. I thought for sure he was going to be traded. I thought at the end of the season, though, right? You're in the playoff race, to your point. why are you making this move now? I mean, I get it. Hey, we want to get money off the books. We want to get rid of Devers. He's a problem inside our locker room. You can't get to at least July to find out if you're in this thing or not, or at a minimum just get through this season before you then finally say it's time to cut bait. That's what's the most shocking part about it to me.
He's T-Bone, that's Alex, I'm BK. Coming up next, the Brewers continue to do one thing better than the Cardinals are doing much of anything. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals fell to the Brewers yesterday 3-2 as they dropped 3 of 4 in Milwaukee over the weekend. They are off tonight as they are traveling to Chicago, where tomorrow night they'll start a 3-game set with the Chicago White Sox. 6:40 will be first pitch tomorrow night. Matthew Liberatore will be on the mound for St. Louis. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got Game 5 of the NBA Finals as the Pacers take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. We'll have pregame coverage tonight starting at 6:30 with tip-off at 7:30. This portion of update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SEMALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, as I was watching over the weekend, there was one thing that was hard not to notice, and it was the number of arms that the Brewers have been able to produce from within. They had that rookie that came up. He was awesome on Thursday night, but you look at their closer, right? Yesterday, the starter that they had on the mound with Priester, they were able to get him. He's been really good for them so far this season. They've just found ways. Freddie Peralta was a guy that they had developed a number of years ago. They find ways to continuously have this conveyor belt of pitching where it's always providing something from within, whether it's 1, 2, typically even up to 3 pitchers, relievers plus starters in any given season. Alex, that's something that they are doing at an extremely high level as an organization right now. That's top to bottom. They do that better than the Cardinals do much of anything right now. And that's not meant to be necessarily like this biting criticism of the Cardinals. We know that they lack on the pitching development side of things. It's something they're trying to fix. That's one of the main reasons why Chaim Bloom has been put in charge of this thing over the next number of years. But you've got to find something. I don't care what it is anymore. Like position players, pitching, maybe it's base running or defense, whatever. You have to find something that you do at an elite level, and you can count on it every single season. That becomes your identity. It's your calling card, not just for a team in any individual season based on your the talent that's available. It's what you are as an organization. The Brewers have become the pitching team in the National League. The Rays are that, or at least have been that in the past on the American League side of things. Maybe that's changing now, but they've been that. The Brewers have taken that mantra on over on the National League side. I don't know what that thing is going to be for the Cardinals, but they've got to find it. And until they do, they're going to continue looking up at teams like the Brewers and the Cubs because they've found their one thing, and the Cardinals are still looking for it right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes one from drafting, finding the right guys. We talked about this last week, taking chances on certain guys because of pitching profiles that they have when they're prospects. I mean, I guess the next question to ask is, what do you believe the Cardinals are closer at to being great at? Because originally I would say, well, it's offense when you look at what these guys have done this season. But we're seeing what it looks like if you don't have that middle of the order bat. And if you look in the pipeline, there is not much else after this. So this is it right now.
I would say right now the Cardinals are excellent at producing quality major leaguers. Nothing more, nothing less. Just like really good, solid supplementary pieces, guys that can be on a contending team, the 3rd through the 9th best player in your roster. I don't know that there's anybody better at producing those players than the Cardinals.
But as we're learning in the last 5 years, that's not good enough to even get you to the playoffs.
I know, but you asked what they're good at. I'm giving you the thing. You didn't ask what does that mean for them. Yeah. What does it mean? It means you have a hole. You have a hole at the top of your roster, and then you have to go acquire that player some other way because the Cardinals have not been good at developing a superstar. They have been horrible at that. It is maybe the biggest criticism that I would have of their development, and that's over the course of 20 years, not just 5. They have not produced one of those really since Yachty, like a legit superstar talent position player.
It feels, and the reason I asked that question is because on the surface, I would say position players in terms of the guys, but now it's starting to feel like they might be in a better spot in terms of pitchers.
Do you really think that? Based on what?
Seeing what, and TK Roby's not their thing, but they're developing him in their system. You've got Quinn Matthews, you've got Tink Hence, you've got Michael McGreevy.
I think if you're asking me which one do they have more of coming, I would say they have more.
That's what I was going to say. Quantity over quality seems like it's pitching versus hitters right now.
Yeah, but the hitters are here. this is what you have. Like, you look up and down the lineup, whether it be Nootbaar, Donovan, Wynn, Scott, Burleson, Walker, Pais, if you want to throw them into this category, Herrera, Gorman, Sajasi, Baker. Those are your guys. And you have to sink or swim with them, but you have produced the position player talent that you're hoping you can win with.
Problem is, too, the Cardinals, like what the Brewers do, as we just mentioned, you've got the guys, but in the meanwhile, while these guys are here, you've got the next ones ready to come up. The Cardinals are hitting that wall where it's like, other than Weatherholt, Sajasi, this is it.
Yeah, but you got another draft coming up, and you could develop some guys within. Like that.
And when we sell, ooh.
Sure.
That's the whole point of sell, right?
Kind of, yeah. But I would say, like, I'm not super worried about their position player pipeline right now. If there's a critique about it, it's what you mentioned, Alex. You don't have that superstar. You're lacking on that side of things. And if you want to build that way, you better have the Brewers thing, which is we've got this pipeline of pitching. But I don't know what it's going to be for the Cardinals under Heimblum. I don't know where they're going to find that edge, but they need to find an edge. And right now it feels like they're lacking in that department.
Yeah, because like you think back to when they were having success, it was really the pitching was where they had the edge, I would say. And I don't know if it was the same edge as what it means today, but they were constantly bringing up a wave of pitchers, right? Like we talk about it, Seymour, Jack Flaherty, Luke Weaver came up in that group. They had Alcantara and Zach Gallen in their system. Like that was the edge that they had. To your point on them not developing superstars, they've always been the team that I think this is their elite thing, but like it might be elite of equaling like a participation trophy is they've been elite at developing like those perfect like role players.
And that's
right?
not easy, by the way.
No, it's not.
a hard thing to do.
And I think it's critical for an organization to do that because we've heard Mo speak publicly about like it's hard to like sign a guy and say, hey, come be a bench guy for us, right? Or, hey, like we need a seventh guy who hits seventh in our lineup, but he's league average. Those guys are hard to find. And the Cardinals are really good at that. But as I think they're going through this learning lesson over the last 2-3 years, is if you don't have a superstar that pairs with what you're developing, which is really good ball players, it doesn't equal a whole lot unless you really get that edge on the pitching side. But to what you're just saying, I don't really see that here yet, right? They've got intriguing arms. To me, they've got intriguing bats down in the minors. I'd say even up here at the major leagues. They've got a whole bunch of quantity with a very much a lack of quality within that group.
And to my point on why I think it's not necessarily a criticism, I agree with you, T-Bone, on them developing a bunch of like good, solid position players. You know who could really use those is the New York Yankees. Yeah. Over the years, they have struggled to fill out their roster. Like they are really looking for guys that can hit 5th through 9th in their lineup and just be league average. And if you could get those guys on a cost control deal, dude, that is a star-studded lineup that is deep from 1 to 9. If you could get the same thing for the New York Mets in the past, this year's is a little different, but in the past, they've been very top-heavy. You would feel better about them. I would say the Padres, there have been times in the past where you could look at their lineup and be like, oh, man, 1 through 5, they're awesome, but they're lacking at the bottom of their order. The Cardinals very rarely lack that depth. They are a team that consistently can go out there, and if they've got their starting 9 on the field, you feel pretty good about everybody that is in the lineup. When things are going right, when they're not dealing with injuries, those sorts of things. And I would say even this year, I feel that way about them. But where they lack is that like 2, 3, 4. Do they have guys that stack up against the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, even right now maybe the Giants? No, they don't. And until that changes, they're going to be wanting more if they don't figure out the pitching side of things. You've got to figure out one side or the other. You either have to find a way to produce or, like the Giants just did, go out there and acquire a superstar position player, or you better be a freaking machine when it comes to your pipeline of pitchers.
Yeah,
and the Cardinals are neither.
And that'd be a fun deep dive to just look at the other teams and see like draft versus acquisition, because
the problem is the Cardinals are unique in the way that they go about it.
Yeah,
like they can't follow the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, the Dodgers models. They can't. They're not going to spend like them.
Yeah.
They're not going to go sign Manny Machado. They're not going to trade for and then extend Mookie Betts. They're not going to acquire Shohei Ohtani or even Freddie Freeman. They're not going to go do what the Mets did a couple of years ago, where they gave 2 pitchers in the offseason $40+ million AAV on each of them. They're not going to give the Bryce Harper deal out. So, like, it's hard to figure out what their model is.
At some point, you have to pick a lane in terms of, are you going to get a guy young and give him the contract extension, or are you going to make a trade and give the guy the contract extension, or are you going to go to free agency? Because you can't. You're asking to do the Albert Pujols method, which, good luck.
I'm not
It
disagreeing
hasn't
with you.
worked in 20 years.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I don't know what the answer is. Like, I would love if you just had this exact same lineup next year and you add Kyle Tucker into it. Like, you're a pretty good team. Like, probably a contender. Probably a team that can make it to the playoffs next year. If you changed almost nothing else about this lineup. They ain't giving him $400 million, and I can't reasonably expect them to. That's crazy. Giving much of any $500+ million to Kyle Tucker? No, I wouldn't do that either, but that's the going rate now. If you're not going to give him that, well, somebody is, so you don't get him. And now you're stuck without a superstar again.
Yeah, I think where they're trying to do this is, to your point, either you extend them when they are young, and then you buy out a couple free agent years, kind of like what the Royals did with Bobby Witt,
but you have to develop them.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's the hard part.
And that's easier said than done. Or they do kind of what they did, because I could be wrong, but I think this formula kind of could still work, is you basically get like the older veterans and you get the veteran aging star, and you just hope he doesn't like fall off a cliff rather quickly.
That was the old Cardinals method.
That was the Goldie. That was the Arenado. Like the Freeman deal. I think they might have been in on a Freeman deal. I think that's one they could have done, because that was like 6 by 156. That's one I could have seen them doing. But like,
I forgot it was that cheap.
Even then, like you want to talk about risk, right? Like we always talk about what they talk about as the risk for the Harper deal. Well, what about the age 33 to 40 years when he's getting $30 million? Yeah, but you do that with like Goldie, right? Correct. You do that with Arenado, and you're seeing the downside of it. So why not do the spending of and again, they can't do it, but that's why we keep saying, like, this is why the Harper deals make sense, right? You're getting like 6-7 years of the prime. You can figure it out in the back end, and instead you just sign up for the 7 years of the back end and just hope they don't fall off of a cliff.
Yeah, it's not an easy needle to thread, and that's what they're attempting to do, and Heimblum's going to be the one that oversees it. He's got to figure this thing out, man. He's got to find a way to find their edge again, and I don't know what it's going to be, but pitching is the easiest thing to do this with, quote unquote, because you can have the pitch modeling. There's a bunch of different stuff technology-wise that you can incorporate. They need to do a better job in Latin America. That is a big place that they have been far behind. I would assume that's something Heimblum wants to fix over the coming years, but you look over at the Brewer side of things, and it's hard not to notice. They've got guys consistently churning through their pipeline. Even after they lost Woodruff and Burns, they still have starting pitchers out the wazoo, and the Cardinals are lacking anything behind Sonny Gray. It's a tough place to be. All right, coming up next, time for the junk drawer here on BK and Ferrario. All right, let's dive into the juncture. I was watching MLB Network the other night, and I saw this, and I wanted to share with you guys.
Dan, what happened? You know, Greg, Sunday night, I was sitting around, and I'm looking at my phone, and I get a text message from Indiana, which I think is the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, saying I owed a $6.40 toll, right? And so, put a credit card in and pay it, or you have 72 hours, or they're going to put points on your card, lose your license, lose your registration. Scares you a little bit, right? So I'm like, whoa, I'm playing golf Wednesday. I'm not taking an Uber. So I put my card in, and it said it does not take this card. I'm like, damn. So I took my wallet out, and I put my second card in. I'm like, come on, this can't be. And then I put the third card in, and it said that the expiration date doesn't correlate with the card. So I'm like, wait a minute. Put my American Express in, and I'm like, damn, this can't happen. Like all four of my cards. I got up Monday morning, and I called one of them was the Klein Avenue toll bridge, and I was on hold for like 15 minutes. So I'm like, I can't believe this. So heck with that. I'm going to call the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So I call Indianapolis. The guy answers. I said, hey, I'm here to dispute a toll for $6.40. He goes, you didn't get that on the text, did you? I said, yeah, I've got it. It was 72 hours and 24 hours. He goes, oh, man, you got scammed. I said, what? He goes, you got to cancel those cards immediately. I put all four of them on there. So for the last 72 hours, I've had lint in my money clip. I haven't been able to do anything.
My God.
Have you guys ever fallen for one?
No, I've never fallen. I get these texts weekly that says you have an unpaid toll.
Yep.
That if you don't get paid, your warrant will be out for your arrest. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, I could totally get falling for this. I have never once driven through a toll in my life, so I don't know why I'm getting these messages.
I have fallen for one time. I was in college. I remember where I was. I was sitting in it. I worked for KTGR, the Columbia ESPN affiliate at the time. And I was doing my morning shift. I did like morning news, and then I would work on the afternoon show for ESPN Radio. And I got this text, and it said something similar, like, I don't know if it was a toll or whatever, but I had to put in my information. I was like, all right, cool, I'll just go ahead and pay this off real quick, whatever. So I put in my info, and then they asked for my social security number. I'm like, oh, that seems weird.
Tell me you didn't type in your social security number.
I didn't. First, I put in, like, my credit card information, all that stuff, right? And then they asked for my social security number. I was like, mother. So I call my bank. I'm like, hey, I need to cancel my cards.
I'm an idiot.
All of my cards need to be canceled immediately. I've been there, done that, dude. I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. I have not done it since. I have hopefully learned my lesson. I'm sure I'll fall for something again in the future. But this is like a real thing.
Yeah.
It's happening all the time, and especially older folks. Dude, it is a huge issue out there right now.
I think I've done it to the point where I've probably missed out on really good deals of stuff because I don't trust things. Like, I get stuff all the time that pops up on social media that says, hey, this is 75% off. And I'm like, man, this is a good deal. And I'm like, nope, not doing it. Anytime I look at something and say, this is a hell of a deal, I say, scam, not giving you my card.
Yeah, I've not fallen for one, but those, especially those toll ones, have gotten close to getting me before. Because there was a time where I had parked somewhere, and then, like, I left, the gate was open, or, like, I didn't have a ticket or something, so I left, right? Like, I'm thinking, oh, okay, so maybe I got away. I got free parking. And then the next day, I get a text that's like, hey, you've got this charge that you need to pay. And I was like, oh, man, this must be them. Like, they saw on camera that it was me. And then I, like, looked more closely. I'm like, oh, from California. Okay, well, I definitely was not in California.
Yeah. Anytime, and I mean, this is how they fall for it. When you threaten the possibility of getting arrested or losing your license,
you panic.
I can understand why people were like, oh, my gosh, and have to pay it. But then it's like, I always have to sit there and ask myself, why would I be getting this? Like, have I driven through a toll lately? Have I done anything where I have to pay this? And it's like, nope, don't fall for it.
We got this after we went to Florida. So I went to Florida. We go there typically every January, February for our my wife's birthday trip. And I got a text whenever we got home saying, hey, you have an unpaid toll from Florida. And I was like, what the hell? We paid for, like, the full week to just have our tolls paid for, right? So I didn't pay anything, but it's one of those things where, like, you almost in the back of your head are wondering, did I screw something up?
Yeah.
Like, what happened here? So it's brutal, man. It's not fun. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into a game of in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. But next, how did the Cardinals make this work with their left-handed bats? They've got a bunch of them, and there's a lot of questions surrounding most of them right now. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about Rhino Shield, the opportunity to upgrade the exterior of your home, of your business. If you've got some worn down looking brick, or maybe you've got asbestos siding on the outside, block, wood, cedar, all of it might need a new look. And that's where Rhino Shield comes into play. And the best part about this is it's better than any paint that you're going to buy at the hardware store. Because like me, you think you can do it yourself. You think that this is going to be cheaper and it's going to look just the exact same. And then when you do it with paint, it gets washed away after year after year after year because of all of the rain, all of the sun deteriorating it. That's where Rhino Shield comes into play, because what they use, it's engineered to outlast paint. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. It's a 8 to 10 coating process of ceramic coating that you can set and not have to worry about. It's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. It's like getting the coating of a Rhino on the exterior of your home. Give Darren a call today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. You can get a free estimate. He'd give you his advice on what he thinks looks best. And I promise your house is going to be looking brand new. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
All right, so how do you make this work? The Cardinals have a lot of different left-handed bats that they want to get into their lineup right now, Alex. And this is one of those situations where the guys that you really want to play aren't hitting anymore, and the guys that you were a little more hesitant to get in the lineup on a regular basis, they're the ones that are hitting. And then you've got the Donovan foot deal that throws a wrench into everything. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The next 4 games, you'll be going up against a right-handed pitcher. Right-handed starter will be on the mound against the Cardinals in the next 4 games. Starts tomorrow night against Chicago with the White Sox, and then it continues into game 1 of the series against the Cincinnati Reds. Alex, how do you go about this? You've got Donovan that you want to get in. He would like to play second base, and that's probably better for his toe right now instead of having to cover all the ground in the outfield. That's one. Nootbaar is another. Scott is a third. Then you've got Burleson. You've got Gorman, who's finally hitting well right now. How do you play this if you're in Ollie Marmol's shoes?
Somebody is not going to be getting reps, and it's probably Gorman unless Brendan Donovan can play the outfield. And I know what's best for him right now with the toe to keep him at second base. And Katie's right. He is the better defender for you at second base. But because of Lars Nootbaar's struggles, you want to get somebody in the outfield instead of Lars Nootbaar. Like Alec Burleson, in my opinion, should be in the outfield. So it's either going to be Burleson's not getting at-bats, you're playing Herrera behind the plate, or Gorman's not getting at-bats. I mean, right now, it seems like Lars Nootbaar is the obvious odd man out. If Burleson's hitting this well, he's going to be in the outfield, and you're probably going to keep Jordan Walker out there. So it comes down to the second base position. Donovan has the upper hand. Now you move to the DH. That's going to be Herrera.
So
Gorman,
for you, Nootbaar and Gorman would be the 2 odd men out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be Gorman and Burley still. That will be the odd man out. Now, I'm saying that that's what I think the Cardinals are going to do. I don't know how you can manage this I don't know how you can figure this out because I think you're going to stick with Scott in center field because of the defense. I think they're going to continue to stick with Lars Nootbaar and just say, hey, the only way for him to get right is he's going to play. And they're not going to platoon Walker. They will not platoon Jordan Walker because this is the year about runway. So I think the guy that is getting kind of the short end of the straw here is going to be Burleson and Gorman. I just don't know how you get playing time for Gorman. He's the one guy I can't figure out how.
That's tough if you're trying to claim that this is also about production. Because Gorman in his last 11 games is batting .350 with a slugging percentage of .710. He has 2 doubles and 3 homers in his last 30 plate appearances. That's a guy I need to have in my lineup right now. When everything's going to crap offensively, that guy's been hitting. And he's coming through in some clutch situations as well. Listen, it's not perfect. He has 10 strikeouts in his last 31 at-bats, so it's still a 30% strikeout rate. But if you make that kind of when you connect, if you make that kind of damage, I need you in my lineup. So I don't know how you make that work. It's probably like, hey, Donovan, one day you're in the outfield. In this 4-game stretch, Donovan's in the outfield once. One day Herrera is going to be behind the plate. So there's 2 days. Maybe Donovan gets a day off just to rest the foot, rest the toe. Maybe you get him a day off tomorrow, for example, and you kind of make it work. And then Gorman's off for a game going into those games against the lefties. So you start him 3 of the next 4 games, and you just got him in a different spot every time for different reasons. Maybe Arenado gets a day off, and you can get him a spot at third base as well. I don't know, but he's a guy that I'm kind of moving things around right now to see what you have here. He's clearly figured some stuff out. I don't know if it's the mechanics of it all or what it is, but he had done everything in terms of the underlying numbers. He's chasing less, he's walking more, all of that stuff was better. Just the contact wasn't as strong as it was meant to be. Now he's starting to make that heavy contact again. I'd like to see this thing through for a little while. And so he, for me, would be the one that I'm prioritizing. I'd be trying like hell to get Burley in there as well, though. I think for me, one of the guys that's taking the step back is Walker. So I know this sounds weird, but for the next 4 games, dude, you're in really gotta win mode right now. I would have Nootbaar and Walker on my bench and just kind of make it work that way. See what that looks like for the time being. But those would be the 2 guys for me that would be missing out on playing time and figure it out from there.
Yeah, I mean,
your defense stinks. But.
Yeah, I would keep Walker in there. I think Walker's one of those guys that I've said it before, it's a season about finding out who they are. Keep him out there because you need that bat. I'm glad he took that at bat yesterday, and that's such a pivotal situation where he was at in the lineup. But Nootbaar's the one that I think should come out of the lineup, and it sucks because you need Lars Nootbaar. You're seeing the effect if he's not your leadoff hitter, but he's not hitting, and you've given this stretch plenty of time. You saw Ollie finally have to come to a conclusion of taking him out of the lineup. One of those outfield spots, Nootbaar's spot, should be Donovan or Burleson. I'm with you. If Gorman's hot right now, you play the hot hand. You put him in the field. The question is, where are you playing him? You might have to suck it up in terms of Herrera play a couple of games behind the plate, and then you get the day off and put him at DH and move guys around. But I think you need to have Burleson in the lineup, and I think it should be a priority right now to keep getting Gorman at bats.
Yeah, this is their biggest stretch, I would say, where it is really trying to figure out, and I don't know how if you can call it balance, runway versus winning, right? Because if you're going by production, I agree, you probably sit Walker Nootbaar. That's not about runway, though, because Jordan Walker's the clear prize of which they want to try and give runway to this year. And that's what's making this tough. Same with, in theory, if you want to do winning, I would agree you put Herrera behind the plate a little bit more, because it opens up more spots for some of these bats in an offense that is really struggling, but they don't want to sacrifice defense right now.
Yeah.
I think what they're going to do is it sounds like they sound open-minded to giving, they gave Nootbaar, 2 days off in this Milwaukee series, if I'm not mistaken? Sounds like they're open-minded to doing that for Scott for this White Sox series. So now you can, maybe you put Nootbaar in center for a couple days. That opens up one spot in the outfield for either Donovan or Burley, whatever you want to do in that scenario.
Why are we doing that for Scott again?
Because Scott's not hitting.
He's not going to hit.
Yeah. Well, they seem to think there's more of a ceiling to that. I think there is potential for more. I don't think he's this bad offensively, but that's kind of the thought process of this is, hey, he's been going through it a lot lately. Give him 2 days off, just reset real quick, but also wink, wink, nod, nod. That is this is helping us create some playing time for guys.
Sure. I'm okay with that as long as it's a day. If they are using today as a day off and then they're adding in another extra off day tomorrow, so it's 48 hours. That's cool. I whatever. But, hey, man, some of it's just, hey, this is the reality of what you've got with Victor Scott. He's probably going to be a roughly league average, maybe a little below league average hitter, and you keep him in there because he's got the Gold Glove defense in center field, adds all the value on the base paths. Like, there's a lot that comes that's good with Victor Scott. Even right now, it's not great at the plate, but you can live with it with one, maybe two guys in your lineup, and he's one of them. What hurts is when the guys that are supposed to be hitting around him are also going through it the way that Nootbaar is, for example, right now. I think there's ways to make it work, but a lot of it comes back to what Alex said with Jordan Walker. If Walker is going to be out there every day and you still are expecting to have Ivan Herrera as your DH on most days, you're not going to get at least one, probably two of these left-handed hitters into the lineup. And then it becomes a question of who are they prioritizing right now? Who are they prioritizing those at-bats for? For me, it would not be Nootbaar. Not right now. That doesn't mean that a week from now he's still out of my lineup. But for the next 4 days while I'm in this stretch, I'm going with the guys that are hitting. And the guys that are hitting are Alec Burleson, Brendan Donovan, and Nolan Gorman. Those are the ones that I'm prioritizing.
Which surprisingly are three guys that you wanted to have some answers on by the end of the season. And, well, not two of them, because I don't think you really needed answers for Donovan. You knew what he was. But Burleson and Gorman, along with Walker, those are the three guys that you needed to find stuff out about this year.
Coming up next, in or out here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, in or out, the Cardinals should have traded for Rafael Devers.
I'll say out. As much as I think that bat would have helped, I don't know where he's playing on this team. He's DH. Okay, well, Herrera's not catching for you, so now you've lost Herrera. He's not playing third, not playing first. So they need a Devers outfielder. So out.
Yeah, I'm out as well. One, I think he's such a mess in the locker room that I wouldn't want to touch that. But two, I don't know where the heck he's playing. We just did a segment where I felt like we were the meme with the chalkboard with a billion equations. We couldn't figure out how to get 5 guys in the lineup. How are we going to do that if we add Devers, who's only going to be DH like Kevon Herrera is? So I'm out.
I'm out on this as well. I think the package that you could have given up, it would have made some sense. If you had traded Quinn Matthews, Chase Davis, I don't know who your equivalent to Jordan Hicks would have been.
Greavy, maybe?
I don't know.
He's got more control.
Hicks is a bullpen arm for them, most likely. I don't know what it would have been, but some kind of a reliever.
Mats.
Maybe Mats. Maybe
Liberatore.
Probably more Mats. Libby has too much value.
He's older, though.
So is Jordan Hicks.
Yeah.
Jordan Hicks is into free agency years. He's got 2 years left at $11 million per year. Mats might be the answer. That's probably the comp. And then a Zach Showalter would have been the throw-in, buy low. Hopefully something comes out of this type of a reliever. So it wouldn't have broke the bank for the Cardinals. They could have made that work. I just don't see where he plays. He'd be your DH, but now what do you do with Herrera?
Make him a catcher.
Yeah, and
suffer the consequences.
I think they clearly don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And even if you wanted to do something with first base, third base, there's just no place for Devers here. I understand people. I've seen some people are mad at hey, the Cardinals should have explored this. I don't think they can, given their roster construction right now. Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, in or out, the Blues will have at least 5 players play in the Olympics.
Next year?
Next year.
You're going to make me go through the roster.
Texier's one.
Texier's one. It's guaranteed.
I could see Benner will be 2.
Rush is back in next year?
No, Rush is not playing.
Okay. Benner will be 2. Parayko, I think, will get there again. 3.
Probably Thomas.
4.
You said 5?
Mm-hmm.
Broberg, if he's healthy, I could see getting on Team Sweden. Is that where
that was mine. So that's my 5, so I'm in.
Okay.
I'm in as well.
Sure. The other one that I wonder about, which I don't think he'll get, but I wonder about Cam Fowler. Oh, no, he's Canada. For some reason, I thought he was USA. I wonder if Fowler gets on for USA, but not on Canada. And then the wild card is, does Nathan Walker get on Australia?
Are they in?
I think Australia's in.
Oh, hell yeah.
I can't imagine.
Why would you not bring Nathan Walker?
There's no way they have 12 guys that they could.
I said the same thing about France, but apparently they do.
By the way, you need more than 12 to play hockey.
Yeah, I know. I'm just talking about the forward lines.
Oh.
Yeah. Let me double check it.
Yeah,
I'll double check as we go.
Guys, in or out, we will not see a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup or the NBA Finals.
I do not think we'll see a... I'm saying out because I think both have a possibility. I do think that we will see one for hockey. I think we're getting a Game 7.
I don't. I think that's over tomorrow. In the NBA, I haven't been paying as much attention to that one to know if we're going to get a Game 7. I have to imagine we will, because, man, I don't know, because Oklahoma City's kind of not caught up back up like I thought they were going to. I don't think we're seeing a Game 7. I think Stanley Cup's over tomorrow.
I think we'll see a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. I think we will see the Panthers close it out tomorrow night in Game 6. They just...
Edmonton doesn't have a goalie.
The other thing, too, is it's just every time I look, all of a sudden you're down 3-0, right? Sure, you came back in game, 3 or 4? Mm-hmm. You can't constantly be going down 3-0, 2-0, 3-0.
The Cardinals' life.
The wins from Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final have all come from having to come from behind and win it in overtime.
Yeah, you just
they don't have a goalie.
You can't live that way. I think the finals, we've seen. The Pacers can hold their punch with the Thunder. I don't know if they're going to be able to win the series, but I could see where they can win one more and at minimum get this to 7 games.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. From the 314, guys, in or out, the Cardinals will make the playoffs. Did you guys change your mind? Answer to the people. Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, changed my mind.
I don't know why this is so frowned upon.
You're not allowed to change your mind at sports talk radio, damn it.
It's such a weird thing. When the Cardinals were playing really poorly earlier this season, I didn't think that the Cardinals were going to make it to the playoffs. And then they started playing really well, not just for a limited period of time, but for like 6 weeks. And I was like, I think this team might be a playoff contender. And now they have lost 7 of 8. And they're 7 games back in the division, 3 games back in the wild card. And one of the teams you're directly competing against just traded for Rafael Devers. So, yeah, as of today, I would say out. I don't think they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would say out. I still think it's more about what the field is than it is about the Cardinals, because I think they're fine. I think I'm more frustrated with myself that I got a little out over my skis because they don't do anything that I think you need to do to win baseball now in 2025. Like, they don't slug and they don't miss bats. Why the hell did I ever buy into this team? So I'm more frustrated at myself. I still think they're a fine team. I think they're about 80 to 85 wins, probably more in that middle 500 range.
They might not finish that way because of what they sell off at the deadline.
Sure, yeah.
But true talent, I think this is like an 85-win team, which is pretty good.
Yeah. It's better than what I thought at the beginning of the season. I thought they were an 80-win team.
And if you had told me at the beginning of the year, I think they're going to win 85 games, I would have been like, oh, cool, I think they might make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because the National League felt like there was a window either in the division or as that third wild card team to get in with 85. San Francisco appears to be running through that window and shutting it behind them.
Yeah, they're the team that's really thrown the wrench in this because San Diego, Mets, Phillies, Dodgers.
We knew those teams were going to be good. Cubs. That was it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Cubs we thought could potentially be that. Yeah. But, like, those 4 or 5 teams, like, you knew, hey, they're going to be pretty good. The question was, are the Cubs really good? The answer's been yes. And then who's that other team then that can kind of jump into the wild card picture and potentially run away with it? I thought it was going to be Arizona. It's clearly been San Francisco.
All right, guys, in or out, the Cardinals will finish the month of June with a winning record overall. So they will finish the month of June at least 1 game above 500.
Like not just in the month, their overall record, 1 game above 500?
They've got 14 games to go. And you got 3 against the White Sox, 3 against the Reds, 4 against the Cubs, 3 against the Guardians, and then 1 game at the end of the month against Pittsburgh.
I'll say I'm in. I think the one that we're really worried about here is the Cubs series. And if you lose 3 of 4, then you're going to be 1 game below 500. And then you got to be talking about going 1 game above the rest of the way. And I kind of feel like this White Sox series should offset the Chicago Cubs series in terms of a sweep. So I'll say in.
Gosh, Chicago's so bad.
Yeah, I'm out. I think they lose 3 or 4 to the Cubs. They lose 2 or 3 to the Guardians. And I think what this month has also shown us, and BK was trying to warn me of this, again, another reason I'm really more upset at myself than anything. This pitching staff can lose to anybody. Because the White Sox are not a good off. To your point, they're not a good team. But they're throwing out some arms that have good numbers so far this year, in a stretch in which your offense is really scuffling. And then as we've seen with your pitching staff, Michaels can have a good outing at any given time. Fedde can have a good outing at any given time. But when we say they have good outings, it's, hey, they had allowed 7 or 8 base runners. They just didn't give up a lot of them to score. And, like, that's just a matter of potentially batted ball luck. So that's where, like, the White Sox, they can easily take 2 or 3 from you.
If that happens, we've got problems.
I mean, they already have problems.
I think they got problems. I think it just confirms the regression fear that BK had, if you haven't been confirmed of that already.
Yeah, I think it's been confirmed.
Yeah.
The Cardinals were built in a way that was like, hey, if they can continue to be the best defense in the last decade, they can continue to sustain this level of success with their pitching. They were never likely to do that, and now we have seen the results. The defense is still quite good. They are a well above average defense. I think even a good defense in Major League Baseball. They're maybe not the best, and they're certainly not the best of the last decade. And what we have seen is that means some regression from your pitching, and it means you lose 2 out of 3 against the Kansas City Royals. You lose 2 out of 3 against the Texas Rangers, and you don't look good against the Brewers. The frustrating part, and Alex, I think this is where you come in, is it's not just the pitching anymore. Now the pitching has had all of those cracks all year long, but we thought, hey, maybe the offense can make up for it. And now the offense is showing some of the cracks as well. That's where you get into a spot where you go into a series against the White Sox and you think to yourself, I don't know what's going to happen here. That's not a great place to be in as a fan. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we want to get back to the Blues. Earlier today, in a piece over at The Athletic, Jeremy Rutherford wrote that Mikael Granlund is the best case scenario for the Blues in free agency. We'll give you his rationale behind that, and we'll talk about what we think they need to hit in free agency or the trade market coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about Classic Air Care, the company that has been making people comfortable since 1926. An HVAC system so important to your household and to your family, making sure that as we get into that hot season of the summer, it's prepared to take you through it and keep you cool in your home. Or in the wintertime, making sure that it's able to handle all of the frigid cold outside. And it's so important to make sure that the maintenance is taken care of with that HVAC system. Whether you've got a 25-year-old, a 10-year-old, or maybe a brand new one, the maintenance is the part that keeps it going for as long as you need it to. And that means bi-monthly cleaning where they come out, not bi-monthly, bi-yearly cleaning where they come out twice a year to check it in the fall and in the springtime to clean the unit, to make sure that any repairs that need to be taken care of. And then if there's issues that pop up when you call, you have them come out and you get priority scheduling. All of that falls under the umbrella of the maintenance agreement. You sign up for it and they maintain that unit for you as long as you are living in your home. And I did this with our first home in 2016, and we're using them still in the house that we live in today. So give Classic Air Care a call today. Schedule and get on that maintenance agreement program. Have them come out right before we get into those 100-degree seasons this summer, and then make sure Classic Air Care is taking care of your home. That's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals off today, and tomorrow night they'll be back in action as they start a 3-game set at the Chicago White Sox. Matthew Liberatore will get the start tomorrow night for St. Louis. 6:40 will be first pitch. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 5 of the NBA Finals as the series is tied at 2 games apiece between the Thunder and the Pacers. We'll have pregame coverage tonight starting at 6:30 with tip-off at 7:30. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So earlier today over at The Athletic, they asked every one of their beat writers to name the player they would like to see that team sign in free agents, who they think the best fit is for their respective teams. Alex, about half of these teams said Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, or Nikolai Ehlers. It seems like everybody wants one of those guys, and I probably should also mention Mitch Marner in this regard as well. Most teams had the same names. There were a couple, though, that were outliers. Pius Suter, New York Rangers. That was the name that they had mentioned for him. I think they were the only team, if I remember right, that was interested in Suter. Connor Brown was listed by a couple of teams, interestingly enough, as a player that could be of note. And then for the St. Louis Blues, Jeremy Rutherford put in here Mikael Granlund as his number 1 free agent he thinks makes sense for the Blues. Here's what he wrote. There are higher profile free agents such as Marner or Bennett who could certainly help the Blues. But if the club could just secure itself a reliable veteran center such as Granlund, it would serve the Blues well because they'd be much deeper up the middle. And at 33 years old, he could help hold the fort down while Dalibor Dvorsky is waiting in the wings. That's what he wrote over at The Athletic. Alex, we've talked ad nauseum really over the last few weeks about which center makes the most sense for the Blues. We have also mentioned the fact that we're not totally convinced that Mikael Granlund is a center. How would you feel about this signing? What would it tell you if the Blues ended up finishing this offseason with Mikael Granlund on the roster?
I mean, I would be fine with it. To me, it would tell me that they were just making a overreactionary move because they wanted an upgrade at their center position. And I think you would be overpaying if you were to acquire Mikael Granlund, because to me, he's not a center. You can use him as a center and potentially and then shift him over to the wing. I think he's better suited in terms of how he plays as a winger. I mean, we all know as centermen, the sole responsibility is the 200-foot game. You're playing on defense just as much as you're playing on offense. And go look at Jay Fresh's numbers. This guy is not good defensively. So to me, this would tell me that the Blues were just getting way too overreactionary, way too aggressive at the center position, and they're chasing their tail a little bit with this one. I don't think Granlund makes sense for them. The way that Doug Armstrong framed what they were looking for was a 200-foot offensive weapon. And when I hear that, I think, okay, a guy that's just as good in his own end as he is in the offensive end, a guy that can hopefully put up 20 to 25 goals, 50-plus points, and somebody that could compete with Shen as a second-line center.
What if I told you it's only 2 years? 2-year, $5 million per year. Let me ask this a different way. Granlund versus Suter, who would you rather have on the Blues?
Both those contracts?
2-year deal, $5 million per year for Granlund. 3-year deal, $5 million per year for Suter.
I would go Suter. I would go the extra year just because I'll take the defense and hope that the offense plays at 5-on-5.
Now, what if I tell you because Suter was mentioned on so many of these different lists, you have to go the extra year now.
No,
it's 4.
No, I'm not getting Granlund. Oh, with Suter?
Mm-hmm. 4 years for Suter, same money. 4 years for Suter. He's much younger. Granlund, 33 years old. 2x5.
I can't really push him.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Because I think this is probably what the negotiations are going to be like.
Yeah.
I think Granlund is a very specific fit where some teams will view him as a center. A lot of contenders will probably view him on the wing. The projections right now via Daily Faceoff, 2 years, $5 million is what he's expected to get. Maybe because there's so few centers in the market and so many teams are looking for one and he can technically play the position, maybe it's 5.5. If you can either go the extra year or you can give him a little extra on the AAV side of things. But I think that's probably the way this thing ends up going is you're going to have to pay more either in salary or in years to one of these centers that are available out there. You'd rather have Suter, though.
I'd rather have Suter than
because of the
Granlund.
defense.
Yes, because of the defense and because there's still 5-on-5 offensive upside. My choice on both of them is to go to the trade market, but if you're telling me those are my two options, I would go Suter.
I would as well. that's where I would lean. I think Suter is, on the free agent market, the best option for the Blues. Of the realistic options. If you tell me Tavares is now suddenly a realistic option, I don't think he is, but if he is, cool, I'll go that route. If you tell me Sam Bennett is back on the market, I can get him for 7 years and $7 to $8 million per year, cool, I'll go back to that side of things. But it doesn't seem that way right now. So among the realistic options at the center position, I think Pius Suter would be my personal preference on the free agent market. And I just don't know who's available in the trades. Yeah. It seems like you get a different story every day, so it's hard for me to go too far.
And that's why you could let this play out to July 1st. And I think I would still kind of wait for the dust to settle, because the problem with this is a lot of these guys that we're talking about are going to sign on day one, because somebody's going to go in there and back up the trucks to them. If I'm Doug, I'm holding off on that, man, because if Vegas goes after Mitch Marner and they believe they could be the destination, somebody's going to have to ship out players. Somebody who makes a free agent signing over the next couple of days. It's risky, but you know what? That's, again, I told you earlier, this is where we differ. I'm comfortable if they come back with the same roster.
Explain that to me, though. Explain that mindset.
I think with a healthy Holloway and a full season of Jim Montgomery, you can get the best of one more season with Oscar Sundqvist at that center position. And the hope is that the trajectory and the growth of Dalibor Dvorsky could play into maybe he's a potential winger for you and can shift to center as the season goes along. I'm not looking at this as a make or break with the roster.
Real quick, on the Dvorsky thing, maybe that's where we're having the difference. I'm not sure. As of today, I don't expect Dvorsky to be on the roster.
I don't either.
I agree.
I don't either. I'm just saying, as the season moves on, he becomes an option down the road.
Like in 26?
No, like the second half of the season.
Like January, February.
I'm saying for the full season next year.
I disagree with that. They're going to get him a taste at the NHL level. They'll give him an extended run. There's injuries that take place. Guys will have their ups and downs. They'll give him a taste of it. He'll be the go-to guy when they're calling somebody up, and that's where you get a little bit more of an extended run.
And this is where I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't know that they will get him a taste this year. I think it's up to him, right? Like, it's possible, totally. If he's playing really well and they decide, you know what, he's ready for that opportunity. They got him, what, 1 game?
2 games.
When he came up this past time, and they basically determined, like, this guy's not ready.
Yeah, but they sent him to the World Championships in the offseason because they wanted more reps against NHL teams.
Said,
not ready.
But you send him there because you want more reps,
Totally.
and then you go into the offseason for training camp and make sure that you're ready for this.
Right, but what I'm reading more into is his national team said, whew, this guy is not ready for this level of competition right now. His NHL team this year said, whew, not ready for this level of competition just yet. You're hearing it from multiple different places, all with incentives to say he's ready, saying consistently, it's just not there yet. And that's okay. I'm not saying he needs to be ready, but that's one of the main reasons why I want them to go out and sign somebody, because I think for this upcoming year, my expectation is that guy's going to be playing third-line center all year long, and if anything comes from Dvorsky, cool, that's found money. But in the meantime, I better have an answer for this spot. And for me, Sonny's not an answer there. Sonny's a question mark at that position. I don't know that you can expect him to stay healthy the way that he did a year ago, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of offensive upside there. In fact, I think there is very little offensive upside. I think you're going to be asking for more every time that you put him out on the ice if you want to be a contender this year. And that could push you into trading way more assets than you're comfortable with at the deadline. So I think it would be a huge disappointment if they don't come out of this thing with a third-line center this offseason.
I agree with that because I look at it and I say, okay, I think it is too much of a risk to return with the same roster. Because it's not like we're saying, hey, run it back with like the Panthers roster, where if they said, hey, let's just bring back the group again, let's find a way to keep Ben, let's find a way to keep Ekblad. That team got to a Stanley Cup 3 straight years. We're talking about a team that required a new record to a franchise winning streak to help propel them into the playoffs, right? And I understand, yes, that was because part of it was maybe they didn't have Jim Montgomery for the entire season. It's also possible they don't play very well, even if Montgomery was here at the very beginning of the year. Like, there is so much of a downside of maybe this team was just kind of maxed out to where they ended up finishing, which is like 95, 96 points. And maybe that's good enough. But I think if you're doing the goal of what Doug Armstrong said coming into the offseason, which was, hey, we want to get 5% better as a roster, you can't run it back with the same roster. That's why I'm kind of with you. I think you have to go out and find somebody, and that's why it's almost too risky. I get what you're saying on the plan of maybe wait to see if somebody like Vegas signs Mitch Marner, and then maybe you wait on the trade block. To me, that's too risky. Like, I'm targeting – my number one target is Suter. I agree with you. He's my guy this offseason along with you. I'd also say, like, if you think Suter's off the board, I'm going after Granlund. Granlund is my guy that I'm going after because I know he can play the wing. I also feel fine with him at the center spot. It's not like he's Buchnevich on the faceoff dot. Yes, he's bad defensively, but I can get by with that. Long as it's just that one to me is more of a we are buying time while also saying we're also making the long play where this guy can be on the wing when Dvorsky eventually is ready.
Yeah, I'm not getting into a bidding war on day 1 or 2 of free agency for those guys.
And I'm saying like that's where it would come down to the money. If it's a 2-year deal worth $5 million per year, I'd do that for Granlund. I'd be willing to do that.
I do have a breaking point. I'm not just saying, here's the blank check, write it. You want 6 years, 5 years? Let's do it. No, there is a breaking point.
I think my mindset is I know that breaking point is going to be broken because teams are going to be desperate to get a middle six center, and I'm just not going to go there.
They might, and if it does, like, would you see 2 years, $5 million per year as that breaking point for you?
For Granlund? Yeah.
And I don't. And that's where we differ is I would view that as that's a pretty good deal. That's pretty much what I would expect to pay for a guy that's producing 60 points. Liability defensively, like it's the opposite of the Suter conversation, right? Suter is very good defensively, does not have a lot of offensive upside. So it's a one-sided third-line player. He's going to get about $5 million per year. I would say the same thing is true for Granlund. One-sided third-line player, probably about $5 million a year, but because he's older, you're going to get fewer years in the term. I'd be willing to do that for him. I also think it makes a lot of sense because of the Dalibor-Dvorsky situation where, hey, after this season, we can reassess everything, see where we're at. I would add this on Sonny as a third-line center. One of the main reasons why I'm not comfortable with that, I feel like you would be, and I don't mean for this to sound the way that it does about Sonny. I promise that everybody here is a big fan of Oscar Sundqvist, the person and the player. But at this point in his career, I think you'd almost be wasting the talents of Bolduc and Neighbors, who could potentially be on that third line, if they're centered on that line offensively by Sundqvist. I think you're not going to be able to get the most and maximize that offensive output by those two players that you're still trying to learn about by having Sonny as their center. I think you could do that if you have somebody that is a bit of an upgrade from them. And I think all of the names that we've discussed are upgrades over Oscar Sundqvist. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can check them out online, as always, at victorymenshealth.com. Whether that means for you fixing your erectile dysfunction issues, it could be meeting some of those weight loss goals that you've been trying to maintain, or it could be low testosterone. You feel some of those symptoms. You don't wake up with the same energy that you once did. You feel like you're not getting the same oomph out of your workouts. That could be due to low testosterone. They can check those levels out for you at Victory Men's Health. 4 great locations, as I mentioned: O'Fallon, Missouri; O'Fallon, Illinois; Sunset Hills; and Town and Country. That's the one that I personally go to. You can check them out on their website and all they have to offer at victorymenshealth.com. Super easy process to book that first appointment over on their website. Click the Book Now tab. Put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them what it means for you to unlock your inner champion. Do it all today at Victory Men's Health and online at victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app, super easy to use, free to download. It is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. If you missed our show today, missed our conversation with Katie Wu, highly recommend checking that out. We also listened to some of the Boston Sports Radio reaction to the Rafael Devers trade. He is going to the San Francisco Giants. And we certainly broke down the Cardinals series, unfortunately, against the Milwaukee Brewers. Alex, I don't know that I've done a good enough job of explaining this today, and that's on me. Hopefully we'll be able to spend a little bit more time on it tomorrow. But my thing with the Cardinals, they're still 2 games above 500. This has not been a bad season. They're getting the answers that they were looking for. Maybe Lars Nootbaar, there's just not another step to take with his game. Maybe this is what he is. He's a league average hitter, plus defender, just solid all around, but never going to have that star potential that they hoped for. That's okay, but it's good to know. My thing with the Cardinals right now, and why I'm probably lower on them today than I have been at any other point in the season in terms of their possibility of making it to the playoffs, is because of what's happening around them. It's about the Giants being better than expected and bolstering that roster by acquiring a top 15 hitter in the sport. It's about the Padres and the Dodgers being exactly what we expected them to be. The Mets and the Phillies being exactly what we expected them to be. And the Cubs taking that step that we thought they might with Kyle Tucker being inserted into the lineup. You add all of that up, you're 7 games back in the division, you're 3 games back in the wild card with no clear team that you can look at and say, that's the one that's going to take a step back for you to be able to take a step forward. I just don't see it right now. And so as of today, really for the first time in 6 weeks, I would put if I'm doing an arrow pointing in one direction of buyer, seller, hold, my arrow was at more of like a buy/hold. I am now trending in the other direction of, as of today, I think the Cardinals will very likely be a seller at this year's trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Like, I look at the Giants making the upgrade that they just did, and then you also look at the Phillies and Padres, 2 teams that are run by general managers who are notorious for giving up everything at a deadline to make their teams better. And then you're talking about either chasing down an NL Central, which, look, our opinions could change if the Cardinals go out and win 3 of 4 against the Chicago Cubs. You're right. We should have that lower third that says our opinions never change on this show. But if you take 3 of 4 against the Cubs, then maybe you're having different conversations internally of maybe that's the spot you're looking at, because who knows what the Cubs do. But on paper,
you better take 3 of 4 than 2 out of 3.
Yeah, on paper,
do well against all these other teams.
When you look at these teams in the National League, it's hard to imagine a Cardinals team with their upgrades and their potential upgrades versus what the Cardinals could do at the deadline, because it's not like this team could go out there and make some type of big roster move at the trade deadline, because I don't know if they're going to be willing to take that type of money in. So, yeah, I mean, I was kind of always on the hold area because I felt like Helsley was just too good of a chip to pass up to trade regardless of where you were. But because of your loss to the Brewers, the standings, and now the Giants move, it has shifted over to, I think this is going to be a sell-off season, or trade deadline.
I agree. I think the meter is now leaning towards they're probably going to be sellers. And again, that can change if they somehow get out of the June swoon and go on another incredible run up until about the All-Star break. But right now they're really going through it. Their pitching, as I mentioned earlier, allows for them to potentially lose to anybody. And then when you add on top of it what you guys are saying of, hey, the Cubs are just better than we thought, right? We thought they were a good team. Turns out they might be a great team. You know, you look at the Giants, we all thought, hey, they're probably going to fall off. They didn't fall off, and then they added one of the best hitters in baseball. Like, just not the year to where if you're an 85-win team, that would have gotten you there in 2023. 2023, 85 wins, you could have been a wild card team. Not in 2025. It's looking like it's going to be 90 to 92 wins to get into the playoffs, and they're just not that team. And when you add on to that, their playoffs are now, and they're struggling enough to where it's probably going to push potentially them to being sellers.
So if you're somebody that's more optimistic, you're still a believer in the Cardinals, the reason is probably as follows. You have 7 games before the All-Star break against the Cubs head-to-head. If you win like 5 out of 7, okay, you make up 3 games on them. Now you're only 4 games back potentially after just those games. This is not including everything else. You have 4 games otherwise to make up prior to this year's deadline with about 30-ish games to play with against everybody else, not named the Cubs, right? You have 3 games after the break against the Diamondbacks. That's a direct head-to-head competitor for one of these spots. The Diamondbacks, I believe, are a half game back of you right now. You have 4 games left against San Diego prior to this year's deadline. So you've got a lot of games head-to-head against these teams that you're directly competing against. That could play in your favor. It could also completely sink your season. That's really where you've got to be able to do your damage. You play well against those teams head-to-head. You go a little above 500 against everybody else, you're right back into this thing. But that's requiring a lot for a team that's not playing their best ball right now. We'll certainly break that down tomorrow. We'll have Jeremy Rutherford on the show as well. We'll ask him about Mikael Granlund. He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN.